Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere colder, somewhere quieter. A city surrounded, starving, and slowly disappearing beneath snow and silence. It's the story of Leningrad, 1941 to 1944. A city that refused to die, even when there was nothing left to live on. This isn't a war story about generals or battles. It's about the people inside. The ones who stayed, who waited, who ate things no one should ever have to eat, and who somehow kept breathing through one of the longest sieges in human history. Before we start, take a moment to settle in. Dim the lights, grab a blanket, maybe a glass of water that's actually clean. Appreciate the quiet hum of your heater, the soft pressure of a full stomach. These are things the people of Leningrad would have traded everything for. And as you listen, remember, this isn't fiction. Every frozen detail, every desperate act, every ration card and snow-filled bowl really happened. It's hard to imagine a modern city without food, heat or light, but that was Leningrad. A place built on art, culture and revolution suddenly turned into a vast open prison of hunger. For 872 days, people didn't live as much as they persisted. Factories turned to ruins. Streets became graveyards. And bread, if you could even call it that, became more valuable than gold. By the end, more than 1 million civilians were gone. Some starved, some froze. Some simply lay down and stopped moving, but others survived. They worked in frozen kitchens, dug graves with bare hands, hauled water through bombed streets, and somehow, through the numbness and noise, kept a tiny flame of humanity alive. So tonight, as we step into that frozen city together, remember that survival isn't always about strength. Sometimes it's about waiting out the impossible, one small breath at a time. Now close your eyes if you want, or just listen. You've just woken up in Leningrad, in the winter of 1941. The air outside your window is minus 30 degrees. The pipes are frozen. The city is silent except for the distant rumble of artillery. And your first thought this morning is simple. Maybe there's still a piece of bread left. You wake up in the dark. It's not early morning dark. It's the kind of dark that feels heavy, like it's pressing down on you. The window beside your bed is covered in a crust of frost, so thick it looks like marble. The room temperature is about the same as the air outside. You can see your breath. You can hear nothing. Even silence in this city sounds tired. You're in Leningrad. It's winter, 1941, and the city has been sealed shut for months. The Germans have surrounded it from every direction, and what's left of the Red Army is too far away to help. No trains, no trucks, no food, no fuel. Just snow, hunger, and the endless echo of artillery that used to come every day but now feels almost like background noise. You've learned to tell the difference between distant shelling and something that might actually hit your block. The trick is not to flinch anymore. Your bed is a wooden frame with no mattress, just a pile of old coats. The springs froze and snapped weeks ago. You've lined the wall with newspapers because someone said it keeps out the draft. The paper is brittle and yellowed, but it's warmer than nothing. You're wearing every piece of clothing you own. 2 shirts, 3 scarves, a pair of gloves with the fingertips cut off, and a hat that doesn't fit. It still isn't enough. The cold here isn't something you escape. It just waits. The apartment around you looks abandoned, but it isn't. It's just quiet because everyone is saving their strength. Talking uses energy. So does moving. So does thinking about food. The walls are cracked. The pipes have frozen solid. bursting in some places. There's a smell of rust, dust, and old smoke. Somewhere below you, in another apartment, someone coughs. It's the kind of cough that sounds like it's been happening for months. You can hear it clearly through the thin walls. Everything travels now. Sound, cold, despair. You stand up slowly. Your body protests. The floor feels like a block of ice. You shuffle to the window and scrape a tiny hole in the frost with your fingernail. Outside, the city looks like it's been carved from iron. Snow covers everything. Cars that haven't moved since autumn. Statues of Lenin dusted in white. Tram lines frozen mid-curve. There's no traffic, no hum, no sound of engines. The tram stopped weeks ago when the electricity went out. The only things that move now are people, and even they look mechanical. You watch a woman across the street dragging a sled. It's not a child on it. It's 2 buckets, probably filled with water from the Neva River. The pumps froze, so people go down to the river now. They chip holes in the ice and fill anything that can hold water. Pots, pans, broken kettles. They haul it home through the snow, step by step, breath steaming out like smoke. That's what the morning looks like here. A quiet parade of ghosts pulling sleds. You open the cupboard, though you already know what's inside. A small jar with something that used to be flour. A crust of bread wrapped in a piece of newspaper. You touch it carefully, as if it might disappear. It's your ration. Today it's 125 grams, about the size of a bar of soap. That's for an adult who doesn't work in a factory. You used to get more, but the rations have been cut again. They say the warehouses were bombed, or maybe robbed, or maybe there's just nothing left. Rumours spread faster than news, and no one trusts either anymore. You take the bread out and hold it to the light. It's grey. It smells faintly sour, and if you look closely, you can see bits of something that isn't flour. Sawdust, cellulose, sometimes ground up straw. It's not food in the normal sense. It's something to chew, so your stomach believes it's full. You break it into small pieces, counting them like coins, and put one in your mouth. It's dry, dense, and bitter. You don't chew quickly. You let it dissolve. Every crumb is deliberate. In the corner there's a radio sitting on a stool. It hasn't worked properly in weeks, but sometimes the signal comes back, faint and cracked. You turn the dial with numb fingers. Static. Then a voice, distant, hollow, almost a whisper. It's a news broadcast. They're saying the Red Army is fighting back near the Volkhov front. They're saying supplies are coming soon. They've been saying that for months. The words don't matter anymore. It's the sound of another human voice that keeps people listening. The light outside shifts, though it's hard to tell the time now. The days barely brighten, just fade from one shade of grey to another. You decide to go out because sitting still makes the cold worse. Your shoes are stiff and cracked. You wrap your feet in rags and tie them with string. Before leaving, you tuck your ration card into your coat pocket. Losing it means losing your food. It's the most valuable thing you own. The stairwell smells of smoke and something else. Something you've learned not to identify. On the steps, a body lies covered with a coat. You don't stop. You've seen this before. Everyone has. The city can't bury them fast enough anymore. Sometimes they freeze where they fell, waiting for someone to drag them to one of the collection points. You step around carefully, like stepping over a sleeping person, and move on. Outside, the air hits you like a wall. It burns your throat, makes your eyes water. You pull the scarf tighter around your face and start walking. The streets are almost empty. A few people shuffle past, bundled so tightly they look like bundles of cloth with legs. You pass a line outside a bakery. Dozens of people, all silent, waiting. The line barely moves. It's been there since dawn, maybe since yesterday. People stand because there's nothing else to do. The promise of bread, even bad bread, is worth it. You join the line. The air smells faintly of smoke and wet wool. No one talks. Conversation takes effort, and words are dangerous. Someone ahead collapses, slowly, like a tree falling in slow motion. 2 others help them aside. No one screams. No one panics. The line closes the gap and keeps moving. After a few minutes, the body is just part of the snow. When you reach the door, a soldier checks your ration card. His face is grey and hollow, eyes sunk deep. He stamps it, hands you your portion, and waves you away. You leave with a piece of bread no bigger than your palm. It's already frozen. You wrap it in a cloth and hide it inside your coat like it's treasure. On the way home, you pass what used to be a park. The trees are gone, every branch, every stump, chopped down for firewood weeks ago. The benches are missing too. People burned those as well. The statues still stand, but they're blackened from smoke. A dog trots across the snow, ribs showing, nose twitching. It stops, looks at you, then keeps moving. You haven't seen many dogs lately. Most have been eaten or disappeared. No one asks questions. You stop by the Neva. The river is frozen thick, the surface white and cracked. A few figures crouch near holes they've cut through the ice. They lower buckets, pull them up, spill some, and start again. You walk closer, careful not to slip. Someone offers to sell you a bucket of water for a few rubles. You don't bother replying. Money doesn't mean much anymore. Food, fuel, cloth. That's the real currency. You fill your own small pot and start the walk back. Along the way you see posters still clinging to walls, bright red, faded now, showing soldiers charging into battle. The slogans are defiant. Not one step back. Leningrad will not fall. You read them because there's nothing else to read. Some people tear them down for kindling. Others leave them up, maybe out of habit, maybe out of belief. Even propaganda feels like warmth when everything else is frozen. You reach your building and climb the stairs slowly. Every step feels heavier than the last. Inside your room, it's even colder than before. You set the pot on the stove, though there's no fire to heat it. You just look at it, pretending. Steam would be nice. The imagination becomes a kind of survival tool. You think about soup, about how it used to taste. You think about potatoes, cabbage, meat, all gone now. You think about summer, green leaves, sunlight, the sound of trams. You stop because thinking too far back makes the hunger worse. Someone knocks at the door. It's your neighbour, an old woman from the apartment next door. She looks smaller every day, wrapped in layers of scarves and sweaters. She asks if you have any salt. You don't, but you offer her a sip of water. She nods, takes it, whispers thank you, and leaves. Her voice is almost gone. You sit by the window, watch the snow fall, and listen to the city breathing. Slow, uneven, shallow. Somewhere a shell lands. The sound is distant, muffled by the snow. You don't even look up. You just close your eyes for a moment. The hunger is a dull ache now, something you've learned to live beside, like a neighbour who never leaves. As night begins to crawl over the frozen roofs, the temperature drops again. The walls creak. The air feels solid. You light a tiny candle, just enough to see by. The flame dances weakly, as if tired too. and you hold your hands near it, even though it gives almost no warmth. It's not really about heat. It's about proof that something can still burn. You hear footsteps outside, someone dragging something heavy down the hallway. You don't open the door. You don't ask. Curiosity is a luxury you can't afford. You sit still, breathing shallowly until the sound fades. Then you unwrap your bread, break off another piece, and eat it slowly, counting every chew. In the distance, a siren wails, long, low, familiar. It means another air raid. You blow out the candle and wait. There's no rush to the shelters anymore. Most people don't bother. The shelters are as cold as the apartments, and the bombs don't always fall where they're supposed to. You sit in the dark, listening to the whine of planes, the thud of explosions, the rattle of glass. When it's over, you wait another few minutes before moving again. You relight the candle. The wax is almost gone. Outside, the snow keeps falling, thick and quiet. The city looks peaceful if you don't know what's happening inside it. You lie down on your pile of coats, pull the blanket over your shoulders, and stare at the ceiling. Your stomach growls. Your fingers ache. The candle flickers once, twice, then dies. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will look the same. The frost will still cover the windows. The bread will still taste like dust. The air will still cut your lungs. But you'll wake up again, because that's what people do here. They wake up, they wait, they endure. And outside, the snow keeps falling on a city that refuses to stop existing, even when everything inside it already feels gone. Morning again, or something close to it. You can't tell anymore because the sky over Leningrad hasn't changed in months. It's always the same grey blanket, heavy and low, pressing down on the city. There's no real sunrise, just a slow brightening of the snow, until you can see shapes. Your body wakes before your mind does, like it's following an old routine that no longer makes sense. The first thought is always the same: food. The bread from yesterday is gone, the crumbs swept into your palm, licked clean without shame. You reach for your ration card, running a finger over its edges like it's a relic. The paper is soft now, worn from being folded and refolded. Every hole punch marks another day survived. You can still remember when bread was measured in loaves. Now it's grams, the same way you'd measure a bullet or a scrap of gold. You decide to go to the bakery again. Not because you expect more, but because waiting feels worse. The streets are quiet, muffled by snow and the weight of exhaustion. The same figures move through the same paths every morning, wrapped shapes, faces hidden behind scarves. You recognize them not by their clothes, but by their pace. Everyone has their own rhythm of desperation. As you walk, you pass a tram car frozen in place. The windows are broken. Snow has filled the seats. Once it carried hundreds of people to factories, schools, markets. Now it's a monument to stillness. Someone painted words on its side in black soot. We will survive. The letters are crooked, uneven, but clear enough to read. You wonder who wrote it and whether they're still alive. You turn a corner and see the bakery line already stretching down the block. People stand shoulder to shoulder, stamping their feet to keep warm. No one speaks. Talking wastes energy. The air smells faintly of yeast and smoke, though you can't tell if that's real or just memory. The door opens once every few minutes. Someone goes in, someone comes out. It's a rhythm the whole city lives by now. The slow pulse of hunger. Behind you, a man mutters something about new bread recipes. You've heard the stories. They say the bakers are using anything they can find to stretch the flour. Cellulose from sawdust, ground bran, bits of cottonseed meal, even wallpaper paste scraped from old buildings. People say it still counts as bread because it's baked in an oven. Others say it's poison. No one stops buying it either way. You shuffle forward, inch by inch. Your toes have gone numb, but you don't move them. Losing your place in line means losing your ration. A woman ahead of you collapses, falling sideways into the snow. No one moves for a few seconds. Then 2 soldiers drag her away. The line closes again, perfectly silent. When you finally reach the counter, the baker looks as pale as the dough. His hands tremble as he weighs your portion. The bread is smaller than yesterday, denser, darker. You hand over your ration card, watch him stamp it, and take your piece like it's a sacred object. You thank him, though neither of you smile. You don't eat it right away. You walk home slowly, careful not to slip. The bread is frozen solid, so you keep it inside your coat to soften. You think about how strange it is to guard something so simple with the same care people once gave to jewellery or money. Hunger changes the meaning of everything. Back home, you sit at the table and unwrap the bread. It's heavy for its size, almost damp. When you press your thumb into it, it leaves a dent that doesn't rise back. The colour is greyish-brown, the texture rough, like compacted earth. You break off a piece. It crumbles instead of tearing. The smell is faintly sour, mixed with something chemical. You put it in your mouth and chew slowly. It sticks to your teeth, tastes bitter and strange, like eating paper soaked in water. You swallow anyway. You think about how this bread is made. You've heard whispers from the factory workers. They say the flour ran out months ago, that now they grind anything dry enough to resemble grain. The cellulose comes from the husks of seeds, mixed with sweepings from the floor. Some batches have bits of sawdust. Others have traces of oil cake. The crushed remains of flaxseed used to make linseed oil. It's technically edible. It keeps people alive just long enough to stand in line again tomorrow. A neighbour once told you she worked in one of the bakeries. She said the smell was unbearable. A mixture of mould, dust and sweat. They knead the dough with frozen hands, wearing coats and gloves. The air thick with flour dust that isn't really flour. The ovens run on scraps of wood pulled from broken furniture. The bread comes out dark, wet and heavy, but it's bread. And in Leningrad, that's enough. You eat half your ration and save the rest for later. People say it's smart to divide it, but the second half always feels smaller. Hunger doesn't negotiate. You wrap it again, hide it in a tin box, and push it under the bed. Everyone hides their bread now. Even families hide it from each other. You've heard stories. A husband accusing his wife of stealing his portion, children caught taking crumbs from their parents. The NKVD investigates theft the same way it investigates treason. Hunger doesn't just hollow the body, it hollows trust. Outside, the snow begins again. It falls softly, endlessly, like time has stopped. You sit near the window, chewing slowly, trying to make each bite last longer. Your jaw aches from the effort. It's strange how much work eating has become. In better days, food was routine. Now it's a ritual. Slow, deliberate, almost sacred. From across the courtyard, you hear a voice singing faintly. It's a woman's voice, thin but steady. She's singing an old Russian folk song, something about the spring returning. You listen without moving. The sound seems out of place here, fragile but real. When it stops, the silence feels heavier than before. Later, you walk down to the street again. You tell yourself you're going to fetch water, but really you just need to see other people. The city is changing. The snow is piled high, grey at the edges where it mixes with ash. The buildings are covered in frost. Some windows are boarded up, others are broken. You pass a cafe that used to serve coffee and pastries. The sign is still there, the letters fading. Inside, the tables are empty, the chairs stacked. Someone has painted a red star on a wall. Farther down, there's a new poster. A list of ration rules. It says that workers in defence factories get 250 grams of bread per day, children get 150, and dependents get 125. You run your eyes over the numbers again and again, as if they might change. People stand in front of the poster like it's a window into another world. One man whispers that his wife hasn't eaten in 2 days. Another says his neighbour boiled wallpaper glue to make soup. You've heard that too. The glue made from animal bone, dissolved in water, strained through cloth, thick and grey but edible. People tear it from their walls, scraping away the past for a single meal. You turn toward the river. The path is slick, the snow compacted by thousands of desperate feet. Near the embankment, a group of people huddle around a fire made from broken furniture. The smoke drifts sideways, sharp and acrid. They're burning anything they can find. Chair legs, books, wooden picture frames. One man holds a kettle above the flames, melting snow for tea that has no tea in it. Just warm water, if you can call it that. You crouch beside them for a moment, hands out, palms numb. Someone passes around a small metal cup. You take a sip. It tastes like smoke and rust, but it's warm. Warmth feels like luxury now. You close your eyes, holding it in your mouth just to feel it. When you open them, you notice what they're cooking. A pot filled with something dark, thick, and unfamiliar. A woman stirs it with a stick. She tells you it's soup made from belt leather. Boiled for hours, scraped, and boiled again until it softens. She says it helps with the hunger pains. You nod, not because you believe her, but because she's talking about hope. And that's something rarer than food. You walk back home slowly, the sound of your footsteps echoing off the walls. Every street feels wider now, emptier. The city used to feel crowded, full of motion. Now it's hollow, like it's holding its breath. You pass a tram stop, the sign still standing. Someone has written words beneath it in charcoal. Bread is life. It's not a slogan, not propaganda. It's just a statement of fact. When you reach your building, you climb the stairs again, step by step. Your legs shake. Your head feels light. Hunger doesn't come in waves anymore. It's constant, a dull hum in your chest. You sit down as soon as you reach the room. The air inside feels colder than outside. You reach under the bed, take out the tin, and unwrap the rest of your bread. It's frozen again. You break off a corner and chew slowly. You can hear your teeth grinding on grit. You remember reading once that people can survive weeks without food. You're not sure if that's true. It doesn't feel like it. Your body feels smaller every day, like it's shrinking to match the city. You can count your ribs through your coat now. Your hands tremble when you reach for anything. Your heartbeat feels faint, like it's conserving energy. Even thoughts come slower. You think about food less as something to taste and more as a shape. Round, soft, warm, imaginary. That night, you can't sleep. Your stomach makes noises that sound like conversation. You roll onto your side, trying to quiet it, but the hunger doesn't listen. You think about all the ways people have tried to outsmart it. Boiling wallpaper glue, eating shoe leather, even grinding coffee beans from burned acorns. You heard that one from someone who used to work in a cafe. He said the smell was almost right. Almost. You think about the bakers again, working through the night in freezing conditions, kneading something that used to resemble dough. You imagine the ovens glowing, the smell of burnt flour mixed with sawdust. You picture loaves lined up on a counter, still steaming, and people reaching out with shaking hands. You wonder if any of them actually believe it's bread, or if pretending is part of survival. The radio crackles once, startling you. A voice comes through, faint and broken. It's reading names. People awarded medals for bravery, soldiers at the front, citizens who helped the wounded. You listen because there's nothing else to do. Then there's a pause and music begins to play. A slow melody, soft and uneven. You don't recognize it. It fades in and out, as if drifting across the snow from another time. You close your eyes and imagine the smell of real bread. Fresh, golden, soft inside, crust warm against your hands. It's the strongest memory you have. The sound of it tearing, the steam rising, the feeling of fullness that once came easily. You hold on to that image as long as you can. Outside, the wind howls through the empty streets, rattling broken windows and sweeping loose snow into drifts. Somewhere in the distance, another explosion echoes. The walls tremble, the candle flickers, and you pull the blanket tighter. The city holds its silence again. You're not sure if it's night or morning anymore. It doesn't matter. You'll wake up, stand in line, chew, swallow, and keep breathing. Because that's what people do when bread isn't really bread anymore. They eat it anyway. The sound of dripping wakes you. For a moment you think it's rain, but it isn't. It's the slow melt of frost inside the room. Drops sliding down the cracked window pane and freezing again before they reach the sill. The air is so cold that your breath hangs in front of your face like smoke. You move your hand from under the blanket and it feels stiff, as if it belongs to someone else. You try to flex your fingers, but they barely respond. The skin is pale blue around the knuckles. You turn your head toward the corner where a metal bucket sits. The ice on top of the water inside it is thick now. You break it with the handle of a spoon, the sound sharp in the stillness. The water underneath is dark and cloudy. You scoop a little into a cup and hold it near your face. It smells faintly of smoke and rust. You hesitate, then drink anyway. It's so cold it hurts your teeth. The taste isn't clean, but it's not poison either, not yet. Water used to be simple. You turned a tap, you filled a pot. Now every drop is a victory. The pipes froze weeks ago, bursting in the walls, flooding basements that later froze into solid blocks. The pump stopped soon after. The only water now comes from the river, or from melted snow if you have the patience to collect it. The city once known for its fountains and canals now survives on buckets and chipped ice. You wrap a scarf around your face, layer another coat over your shoulders, and prepare to go out. The empty kettle dangles from your hand like a relic. Outside, the sky is the colour of iron. The cold cuts through every seam in your clothing. You walk carefully, boots crunching over snow mixed with ash. At the end of the street, the line of people heading toward the Neva is already forming. It's the same slow procession every morning. Men, women, children, each dragging something behind them. A sled, a cart, a bucket tied to a rope. Some carry pots from their kitchens, enamel chipped, handles missing. You join the line. No one talks. The only sound is the soft scraping of feet and the faint groan of sled runners on the frozen road. As you walk, you pass an apartment block where black smoke drifts from a broken window. Someone inside must be burning furniture. The air smells of varnish and desperation. You remember when firewood was rationed like food. That ended when there was nothing left to ration. People started dismantling their own homes piece by piece. Doors, chair legs, floorboards. Anything that would burn, even for a few minutes. The closer you get to the river, the colder it feels. The wind whips through the open streets, carrying with it the distant hum of artillery from the front. You've learned to ignore it. The explosions come and go, far away but constant, like an unpleasant memory you can't quite forget. When you reach the embankment, you can see the holes cut through the ice, dark circles surrounded by splintered frost. Around them, small groups huddle, waiting their turn. The surface of the river creaks and groans, the sound deep and alive. A soldier stands nearby, stamping his feet, his rifle slung across his shoulder. His breath forms clouds in the air. He's there to keep order, though there isn't much left to order. People are too tired to fight. You wait in silence, clutching the kettle, watching as the person in front of you lowers a bucket into the hole using a rope. It dips, fills, and is pulled back up. The water inside steams faintly in the freezing air. A woman next to you slips and nearly falls. Two others grab her arms before she hits the ice. No one says anything, but she nods once, muttering a thank you that no one answers. When it's your turn, you kneel, careful not to let your gloves touch the surface. The cold bites through fabric instantly. You lower your kettle into the water. The rope stiffens, the metal creaks. You pull it up, shaking off ice from the rim. The water inside is dark, flecked with tiny pieces of ice, bits of dirt, maybe ash. It doesn't matter. It's water. You tie a cloth over the top and start the long walk home. The kettle feels heavier with each step. Halfway there, your hands go numb, and you have to stop to rest. A man passes by, pulling a sled piled with barrels. He nods at you but doesn't slow down. Everyone's eyes look the same now. Blank, distant, focused on one thing only, getting through another hour. You see others carrying makeshift containers, teapots, gasoline cans, old paint buckets. Anything that holds liquid becomes precious. Some people have started digging wells in courtyards, though most freeze before they reach water. Others collect icicles from roofs, melt them slowly in pans. There are stories of people breaking open heating pipes, drinking whatever comes out. Some lived, some didn't. You reach your building and climb the stairs, kettle bumping against your leg. The hallway is darker now. One of the windows has shattered, and snow drifts inside, forming small dunes along the wall. You unlock the door with stiff fingers and step into the cold room. It smells of wax and damp wool. You set the kettle on the stove, though there's no fire beneath it. You light a candle, the last stub of one you've been using for days. Its flame is weak, flickering, throwing long shadows across the walls. You hold your hands above it, pretending the warmth is stronger than it is. You pour a little water into a cup and set it near the candle to thaw. It takes almost an hour before it's warm enough to drink. When you finally take a sip, it tastes faintly metallic, almost oily. You try not to think about where it came from. The river where sewage, ash and bodies have been dumped for months. There's no other choice. The human body can live without food longer than without water, Everyone in the city knows that now. You hear footsteps in the hall. It's your neighbour again, the old woman with the scarves. She knocks softly. When you open the door, she asks if she can have a little water for her grandson. You pour her half a cup. Her hands tremble as she takes it. She thanks you, then pulls something from her pocket. A button. Just a plain brown button. She presses it into your palm as payment. You try to give it back, but she shakes her head and leaves. You set the button on the table and stare at it for a while. In the afternoon, the radio crackles. The voice is weak but clear enough to understand. They're talking about the weather. Another cold front moving in. Temperatures expected to drop below -35. You turn the dial slowly, hoping for music, for something human, but the only sound that comes is static. You switch it off. The silence that follows feels louder than the broadcast. You decide to save the rest of your water for later. People say you can make it last longer if you sip it slowly, a mouthful every few hours. Others say to freeze it and chip away small pieces through the day. There are no rules anymore, just habits disguised as logic. When night comes, the air grows even colder. The candle burns out. The darkness is complete, so thick it feels like a weight. You can hear the wind outside, scraping against the walls, howling through the cracks in the window frame. Somewhere in the distance, another explosion echoes. The city flinches, then falls still again. You lie down, curling into yourself, listening to your heartbeat. It feels slow, steady, quiet. You imagine water flowing somewhere beneath the ice of the Neva, unseen and unstoppable. You wonder if it's cleaner down there, deep under the frozen surface where the cold can't reach. You imagine diving into it, letting it swallow you whole, the silence thick and absolute. You wake again sometime before dawn. The candle stub has melted into a puddle of wax. Your throat feels dry and raw. You reach for the cup beside the bed, but the water inside is frozen solid. You scrape at it with a spoon, breaking off a shard, and let it melt in your mouth. It's not enough. You sit there for a long time, listening to the sound of your own breathing. The days blend together now, marked only by the rhythm of fetching water, collecting bread, waiting. You've stopped keeping track of dates. Time doesn't feel like something that moves forward anymore. It just circles around the same hunger, the same thirst, the same grey light. Later you go outside again. The cold feels sharper today, cutting at your eyes. You see a small group of people near a frozen fountain. They're chiselling at the base, breaking off chunks of ice. A woman fills her bag with pieces and ties it shut. Her fingers are red and cracked. She looks up as you pass and says, "They say the river's cursed now. Too many dead in it." You don't answer. She shrugs, lifts her bag, and walks away. At the corner, you see a young boy trying to break icicles from a drain pipe. He uses a stick, then his hands. He finally pulls one free, long and clear like glass, and starts sucking on it. His lips stick to the ice for a moment before he manages to pull away. His tongue leaves a faint smear of blood. He doesn't seem to notice. You turn back toward the river, following the same path. The soldiers are still there, guarding the holes. One of them tells you to hurry. The ice is thinner today. You kneel again, fill your kettle, and look into the dark water. The surface moves slowly, reflecting the grey sky. For a moment, you can see your own face in it, pale, hollow, eyes sunken. You look away. You carry the kettle home, arms aching, fingers stiff. The handle bites into your glove. When you finally reach your room, you set it down carefully, afraid of spilling even a drop. You pour a little into the cup and stare at it. It's cloudy, a faint film forming on top as it cools. You think about boiling it, but you have no fuel left. You drink it as it is. The first sip burns your throat, but then it's gone, leaving nothing behind but the faint taste of metal. You close your eyes, holding the cup between your hands, pretending it's warm. You whisper a small thank you to no one in particular, maybe to the river, maybe to the city, maybe to the part of yourself that still believes this matters. Outside, the wind changes direction, and for a moment you can hear the faint sound of the church bell from across the city. It rings once, twice, then fades. You sit in the half light, the cup empty in your hands, waiting for the next sound, the next movement, the next reason to stand up again. The city keeps breathing, slow and shallow. Somewhere beneath the frozen streets, the pipes are still cracked, the wells frozen, the river moving under its shell of ice. And above it all, people keep walking with buckets and sleds, hauling their survival 1 litre at a time. The cold changes everything. It doesn't feel like weather anymore. It feels like an occupation. It presses into the walls, crawls into clothes, creeped through the skin. The frost lives in your lungs now, in your joints, in your bones. Even inside where people used to feel safe, you can see your breath cloud the air. There's nowhere left to escape it. It's early evening, though you wouldn't know it from the light. The sky has been grey for so long that the colour of dusk doesn't mean anything anymore. You sit by the stove, staring at its empty mouth. The last piece of wood burned away 2 nights ago. You keep the ashes there because they make it look like the fire still remembers how to exist. The walls around the stove are black with soot. You run your hand over the surface, leaving a streak of grey on your fingertips. Before the war, winter meant warmth. Thick wool coats, fires in every building, the smell of burning pine drifting through the streets. Now the smell is different. It's sharper, dirtier. It's the smell of burning furniture, old shoes, broken doors. The city has been stripped bare of everything that once held heat. People tear apart their homes, plank by plank, burning floorboards, picture frames, books. The wood from chairs goes first, tables come next, then doors. Then whatever is left that can still catch a spark. You once thought firewood was everywhere, but that was before you understood how fast desperation consumes things. Within weeks of the first frost, the trees in every courtyard were gone. Parks became fields of stumps. People burned the benches and fences. Even wooden street signs disappeared. Anything that could feed a flame vanished into smoke. You still remember the day your neighbour cut apart her piano, the sound of the axe echoing down the hall. She said it was too heavy to move anyway, and the wood would last a few days. You helped her carry the pieces. The smell of varnish filled the air when she lit the first one. The fire burned fast, too bright, too brief. The next day, she sat beside the ashes, staring at the keys she hadn't been able to burn. Electricity went not long after. The city tried to ration it, but there wasn't enough power left. First the streetlights went dark, then the trams, then the apartments. When the grid finally failed, no one was surprised. The bulbs still hang from the ceilings, dusty, useless. You sometimes find yourself reaching for the switch out of habit, even though nothing happens. The darkness is complete now. When night comes, it feels like the entire city disappears. Candles have become currency. People trade them for food, for water, for favours. A single stub can be worth more than a coat. You had 3 once, saved from before the siege. You used them carefully. 1 for light when you needed to read the ration card, 1 for boiling water, 1 for moments when the dark felt too heavy. The last one burned out last night. You watched it until the end, until the wick hissed and went black. You didn't move for a long time after that. Now the room is lit only by the faint glow of snow outside the window. The light bounces off the frost, pale and cold. Shadows move across the walls when the wind blows. You've started to imagine shapes in them. Faces, movement, something alive. You know it's just the flicker of your eyes adjusting, but sometimes you talk to them anyway. It's easier than silence. The temperature keeps dropping. The water in the kettle is frozen solid again. You tap the surface with a spoon and hear the dull ring of ice. You think about melting it, but there's no fuel. You think about walking outside to find something, a scrap of wood, a broken crate, anything. But it's already dark, and the streets aren't safe at night anymore. You decide to stay. The air hurts to breathe. It feels sharp, thin, like inhaling needles. You wrap the blanket tighter, pull your scarf over your mouth, and sit on the floor. Your body shivers uncontrollably for a few minutes, then stops. It's worse when it stops. Shivering means your body still remembers what warmth is supposed to feel like. Stillness means it's giving up. In the silence, you hear faint noises from other apartments. A cough, the sound of something breaking. A distant voice singing quietly, maybe to a child. The walls are thin. You've learned everyone's habits without meaning to. You know when they wake, when they boil water, when they go quiet. You can tell who's still alive by the noises they make. When the sounds stop for a few days, you know what it means. No one talks about it. You find an old book under the bed. The pages are brittle, yellowed, the cover cracked. It's a volume of poetry, something you once read for comfort. You hold it in your hands, staring at it for a long time. Then you tear out the first page. The sound makes you flinch. You tear another, then another. You fold the pages into small balls, place them in the stove, and light them with a match. The paper catches quickly, curling into black edges, the letters twisting into smoke. The fire lasts less than a minute, but for that minute the room glows. You hold your hands close, feeling the brief ghost of warmth, watching the ashes crumble. You feed the fire another few pages, then stop. You can't bring yourself to destroy the whole book. You blow on the ashes, hoping for one more spark, but it's gone. You sit there, hands grey with soot, staring at the small pile of burned words. The smell lingers. Ink, smoke, something almost sweet. You breathe it in deeply, pretending it's enough. The city outside looks hollow. From the window, you can see other apartments lit faintly by candles or oil lamps made from melted fat. The glow flickers for a while, then vanishes one by one. In the courtyard below, someone has built a small fire out of what looks like a chair leg. A few people huddle around it, their faces orange in the light. You can hear them talking quietly, the sound carrying up through the snow. They're arguing over who gets the next turn to stand closest to the flames. You remember the warmth of summer, the heat rising from the pavements, the air heavy and bright, the smell of flowers from the park. It feels like another life. Now, the memory of warmth hurts more than the cold itself. You push it away. At night, The cold deepens until it feels like a living thing moving through the walls. You can hear the building settling, creaking, sighing. Sometimes ice forms along the inside of the window, spreading across the glass like veins. You scrape it away with a spoon, but it always returns. Your breath hangs in the air like fog. When you touch the wall, it burns your skin. You try to sleep, but the cold keeps you awake. Your body curls into itself automatically, conserving what little heat remains. The blanket smells like smoke and damp fabric. You press your face against it anyway. Sleep comes in short bursts, interrupted by the sound of the wind rattling the shutters. When morning comes, the world hasn't changed. The same grey light, the same silence. You sit up slowly, joints stiff, fingers numb. The room looks smaller now, as if the cold is shrinking it. You check the stove, the kettle, the cup. All frozen, the air feels heavy. You decide to go outside again. Maybe someone in the courtyard has found something to burn. You wrap your scarf, pull on your gloves, and open the door. The hallway is dark, lit only by a single candle near the stairwell. Someone has left it there, wax dripping onto the step. You touch it as you pass, just to feel the faint heat. Outside, the snow is deeper. Your breath fogs the air, and every step crunches loudly. The wind cuts across your face, bringing tears to your eyes. The courtyard looks like a graveyard of wood. Piles of broken furniture, splintered boards, empty spaces where benches once stood. You walk toward a small group gathered near the fire pit. They're burning books today. You recognise the covers. Textbooks, encyclopedias, old novels. The smoke smells strange, chemical. One man pokes the fire with a metal rod, stirring the ashes. Another holds a pot above it, trying to boil snow. The pot rattles in his shaking hands. You stand there for a moment, feeling the warmth on your face, the first real warmth in days. Someone offers you a turn near the fire. You nod and step closer. The heat feels almost painful. You hold out your hands, watching the skin redden. The man with the pot says the books burn faster than wood, but don't last as long. He laughs once without humour and says, "Knowledge keeps us warm." No one answers. The fire pops loudly, a page curling in the flames. You stay until the last book turns to ash, then step back. The heat fades quickly. You look up at the buildings around you. Every window is dark. The sky looks close enough to touch. Back inside, the air feels even colder after the fire. You sit on the floor again, pulling the blanket over your shoulders. Your hands are shaking, not from cold, but from the memory of warmth. It makes the absence worse. You close your eyes, trying to picture light. Electric bulbs glowing yellow, fires crackling in stoves, the flicker of lamps in windows. You remember how shadows used to move when there was light to make them. Now the shadows just sit there, unchanging. The human body adjusts to almost anything. You've learned this. Hunger becomes routine. Thirst becomes manageable. Even the cold becomes a kind of constant background noise. But the darkness never feels normal. It's too complete, too final. You start to forget colours. The world shrinks to shades of grey and faint orange glows that come and go. That night, as you sit by the window, you notice movement outside. A thin line of light moving slowly down the street, a lantern carried by someone walking. You watch it until it disappears around the corner. For a few seconds, you can still see the afterimage. A faint glow burned into your eyes. You hold on to it as long as you can. When the last hint of light fades, the darkness returns like a blanket dropped over the city. You listen to the wind pressing against the windows, the faint creak of the building settling. Somewhere below, someone coughs. Then everything is still again. You pull the blanket tighter, your breath shallow, your fingers curled against your chest. The darkness feels endless, but you know the morning will come again. Not brighter, not warmer, just different by a few degrees. Enough to start the routine again. The same frozen water, the same empty stove, the same grey light trying to push its way through the frost. The city keeps breathing, slow and shallow, through the silence and the dark. And above it, somewhere beyond the clouds, the sun keeps burning, unseen and indifferent, while down here people chase the smallest flicker of warmth they can find, guarding it like a secret that can't afford to go out. By now, the hunger has stopped feeling sharp. It's become something else. It sits in your stomach like a cold stone, heavy and familiar. It doesn't roar anymore, it whispers. You stopped feeling real hunger weeks ago. What you feel now is its ghost. The body adapts. It eats itself quietly. You used to dream about food. Plates of dumplings, slices of bread, soup steaming in a bowl. But those dreams stop too. Your mind has learned to protect you. It doesn't show you what you can't have. It just gives you blankness, a numb stretch of time where nothing hurts. When you wake, it's worse. You remember what you're missing all over again. The bread ration isn't enough to keep anyone alive for long. People learned that the hard way. You started stretching it, pairing it with water, chewing it for minutes before swallowing. Then you started boiling it, trying to make it last longer. Eventually you realised you needed something else, anything else, to fill the space inside you. That's how the city discovered new recipes. Not for taste, for survival. It began with rats. No one wanted to admit it at first. The idea disgusted people. But when the stores emptied, when the cats disappeared, when even the dogs were gone, people started to notice that rats were still everywhere. They lived in the walls, under the floors, in the grain warehouses that had long since been emptied. They fed on the crumbs of a starving city, and eventually the city fed on them. The stories spread slowly. Someone said they saw a man selling cooked meat in the market that didn't look like pork or beef. Another said his neighbour caught something in a trap and boiled it in a tin pot. People whispered that it tasted like chicken if you didn't think about it. The smell of meat cooking drew attention, dangerous attention. If anyone asked what it was, you said nothing. Silence became a kind of seasoning. You remember the first time you saw one? Not on the street, but in your own room. It moved quickly, thin and grey, darting across the floor near the stove. You didn't scream. You didn't even move. You just watched it. For a long time, you thought about what it meant. That something was still alive, moving, surviving here. You sat still and waited for it to come back. When it did, you were ready. You had no trap, no weapon. You used a pot. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. You remember the sound it made when it hit, the small, dull thud. You remember how light it felt in your hands afterward. You sat there for a long time, staring at it, the room spinning around you. Then you lit a candle and cleaned it as best you could. You boiled water, added salt if you had any left, and waited. The smell filled the room. Not pleasant, not disgusting, nor just strange. When you tasted it, it was tough and oily. You chewed slowly, forcing yourself to swallow. You didn't think about what it was. You just thought about warmth spreading through your body. After that, it became easier. Not easy, but possible. People began to set traps. They made them from wire, from old tin, from whatever they could find. Children hunted near the ruins of warehouses. Some people even sold them, cleaned and skinned, at the markets that still appeared in the shadows. No one talked about it loudly, but everyone knew. Rats kept people alive when nothing else did. Then came the glue. Someone discovered that old wallpaper glue, the kind made before the war, contained animal bones and starch. It could be boiled down into a thick paste. The discovery spread through the city like a rumour of gold. People stripped their walls bare. You could walk down a street and see apartments with nothing but plaster left. The wallpaper came off in damp sheets, rolled up, and carried to the kitchen like treasure. You remember helping your neighbour do it. The two of you worked in silence, peeling away the faded floral patterns that had once made the room feel warmer. Beneath the paper, the walls were cracked and grey. You tore off enough to fill a bucket, then broke it into pieces and dropped it into boiling water. The smell was strange. Old dust, paste, something faintly sour. After an hour, it thickened into something that looked like soup. You poured a little into a bowl and stared at it. It was pale, cloudy, sticky. You ate it anyway. It coated your tongue, clung to your throat. It didn't taste like food, it didn't taste like anything. But afterward, your stomach stopped aching for a few hours. That was enough. People began trading wallpaper in the markets. Strips of patterned paper became more valuable than books. Some people said the newer glues were made from chemicals, that they could make you sick. Others didn't care. You couldn't afford to care. You'd rather die from poison tomorrow than from hunger today. When the walls were bare, people turned to other things. Leather belts, shoes, book bindings. Anything that had once been treated with oil or animal fat could be boiled into something edible. The smell of burning leather became familiar, thick and greasy. It clung to clothes and hair. It became the scent of winter. You remember seeing a woman at the river once, scraping the glue from a piece of wallpaper she had found in the rubble of a bombed house. Her hands were shaking, her fingers red from the cold. She told you it was good wallpaper, the old kind, the kind that had bones in it. You nodded and walked away, pretending not to understand what that meant. Sometimes people found stranger things to eat. The zoo animals had been gone for months. The pigeons disappeared next. You'd walk through the city and see empty skies, silent rooftops. Someone said even the crows left. Maybe they were smarter than people. In the markets, you'd see small piles of things on rags. Buttons, bits of string, a few dried beans, sometimes something that looked like meat. No one asked too many questions. The traders were thin, their faces hollow, their hands trembling. They spoke in low voices. You learned to tell which ones were desperate enough to sell anything. You once saw a man offer to trade his coat for a tin of something. The tin had no label. He asked what was inside. The trader just smiled and said, "Protein." The man hesitated for a second, then handed over his coat. He opened the tin right there in the street, scooped out a grey paste with his fingers, and ate. You couldn't tell what it was. You didn't want to. The city learned not to look too closely at food. Survival depended on imagination. If it was warm and it filled the stomach, it was enough. The mind edited the details to protect itself. At night, the smells of strange meals drifted through the buildings. Glue, leather, something burned. You could tell who had found something by the smell of their room. People who hadn't eaten in days stood in the hallway, breathing deeply, pretending it was enough. You learned to ration your glue soup carefully. Too much made you sick. Too little did nothing. You boiled it until it thickened. Added crumbs of bread when you could. Stirred it with a spoon that had lost its handle. The sound of stirring became its own comfort. It meant something was happening. Something alive. You'd sit near the window while it cooked, watching the frost form again on the glass. Sometimes you'd see people moving through the snow outside, carrying bundles of paper, scraps of wood, empty pots. Everyone looked the same. Faces pale, eyes hollow, movements slow. Hunger had stripped away everything that made people different. Once, you saw a boy standing by a wall, scraping it with a knife. He was chipping off the last bits of wallpaper glue. When you walked past, he looked at you and said, "It tastes better if you close your eyes." You didn't answer. You just kept walking. In some apartments, people started cooking things that weren't meant to be eaten. Candles made from animal fat, linoleum scraped from the floor, even shoe polish. Anything that could be boiled, they tried. Some lived, some didn't. The line between food and poison blurred completely. You remember boiling glue that last time, the smell filling the room. You sat on the floor, watching the steam rise, feeling your hands tremble from weakness. You dipped a spoon, let the thick liquid cool, and swallowed. It burned your throat going down, but afterwards you felt a strange kind of calm. Your body stopped shivering for a while. You could sit still and breathe without pain. You realised that's what survival meant now. Small victories of stillness between waves of suffering. In the distance, artillery thudded again. The sound didn't make you flinch anymore. You just stirred the pot, slow, rhythmic, the motion almost soothing. The candle flickered weakly on the table, its wax dripping into the soup of your shadow. The room smelled like boiled paper and dust. You sat there, staring at the pot, waiting for it to cool, waiting for morning, waiting for something that felt like life. And outside, the city kept eating itself quietly. Its wood, its walls, its memories. One meal at a time, because no one had anything else left. You wake up with the same dull ache in your stomach. It doesn't even feel like hunger anymore. It's just there, heavy and quiet, a constant reminder. Your body has stopped asking for food the way it used to. It just waits, using itself piece by piece. You can feel it, the shrinking, the way your arms feel lighter, the way your skin folds loosely where it used to be tight. Even your face in the cracked mirror looks thinner, your eyes sunken, your mouth small and dry. It's the look everyone has now. The idea of eating has become strange. The city talks about food the way it once talked about weather. Always, endlessly, but without hope of change. You hear people whispering in the stairwell, counting grams, describing imaginary meals. They say it helps, talking about it, but you're not sure anymore. Sometimes it feels worse. The rations have been cut again. The bakery lines are shorter now, not because there's more bread, but because fewer people can stand long enough to wait. The air outside is sharp, biting. Every step feels like it costs energy you can't afford to spend. You used to plan your days around errands. Now you plan them around how far your legs can take you before they stop obeying. You still go out because sitting still feels like giving up. The streets are quiet, except for the sound of boots crunching snow and the occasional creak of a sled. The sleds carry everything now: water, firewood, bodies, sometimes all at once. You see one in front of you, covered with a blanket. You look away. The bakery looks the same as always. The same line of silent figures, the same wind pressing against the door, the same pale faces looking down. You recognise some of them. You see them every day. The woman with the blue scarf who used to sing in the mornings no longer sings. The man with the limp no longer talks. Everyone is moving slower, quieter. Hunger has turned the city into a whisper. You hold your ration card tightly in your hand. It's soft from wear, the edge is frayed. The paper feels fragile, like it could crumble if you breathe too hard. You watch as the baker stamps each card in turn, his movements mechanical. The bread is smaller again. You get your portion, nod in thanks, and walk out. You don't eat it. You can't yet. Eating too early in the day makes the rest of the hours unbearable. You save it for later, for when the light fades and the silence gets heavier. You walk past a man sitting on the curb, holding a tin cup. Inside is a lump of snow. He stares at it as if waiting for it to turn into something else. You think about stopping, but you don't. Everyone is staring at something now. You take a long route home, through streets you barely recognise anymore. The buildings look skeletal, their windows shattered or covered in frost. Signs hang crooked. Posters peel from walls. The faces of soldiers on them are bright and alive, smiling, while the people below move like shadows. When you reach your apartment, the room feels smaller again. The cold makes it feel like it's shrinking around you. You take off your gloves, your fingers stiff and pale. You unwrap the bread and stare at it. You don't eat yet. You set it on the table and just look. It's hard to describe what happens when food becomes this rare. You start to separate the idea of eating from the act itself. You look at the bread the way you might look at a photograph. Something that means more than it is. You think about it for hours before you take a bite. You plan it. You rehearse it. You imagine the taste, the texture, the smell. The imagination becomes its own kind of nourishment. You used to eat out of hunger. Now you eat out of habit, out of fear, out of the need to mark another day survived. You cut the bread into thin slices, careful not to crumble it. You place them in a small tin box, counting them like currency. Then you take one, hold it between your fingers, and chew. Slowly. The first bite is always dry, the second softer. You close your eyes and let it sit on your tongue. You remember flavours. Butter, salt, the sweetness of fruit, the warmth of soup. They're all gone now, but your mind still plays the memories. You taste them even when you know they're not there. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes it hurts. People have started calling it the art of eating nothing. It's not a joke. It's what you do when you have to make emptiness last longer. You eat slowly, you drink water between bites, you breathe carefully. You cut your portion smaller each time, telling yourself that control is the same as satisfaction. It's not, but it keeps you from falling apart. You learn tricks. Some people chew bits of paper just to keep their mouths busy. Others boil old tea leaves again and again, drinking the bitter water until it turns clear. You've heard of people roasting sawdust, stirring it into hot water, pretending it's porridge. You haven't tried that yet. Maybe you will soon. You've also learned that pretending to eat can fool your body for a while. You sit at the table with an empty bowl and a spoon, stirring air. You lift it to your mouth, breathe in, and swallow nothing. It sounds ridiculous, but it works. For a few moments, your stomach calms down, your hands stop shaking. You tell yourself you've eaten. You lie well enough that your body believes it. You think about how eating used to be a social thing. Tables, conversations, laughter. Now it's private, secret, almost shameful. You don't eat with others anymore. No one does. Sharing means dividing, and dividing means dying faster. The city eats alone now. Behind closed doors, in the dark, quietly. You can tell who hasn't eaten by the way they move. The slow, careful steps, as if every motion might break them. The way they hold their arms close to their bodies, conserving heat and energy. The way their eyes flicker when they see someone chewing. You stop eating near windows because of it. You don't want to be watched. The smell of food, real or imagined, has become dangerous. A pot boiling, a crumb burning on a stove, anything like that draws attention. There were stories early in the siege of people breaking into homes when they smelled something cooking. It doesn't happen as much now. There's nothing left to take. You look down at your hands. The skin is cracked, the nails broken. Your fingers look thinner than they used to. You touch your wrist and feel the bones. You wonder how much less of you there is now than there was at the start. You don't want to know. Outside, the wind howls through the streets. The snow drifts higher against the doors. The radio has gone silent again. You light the candle stub and sit near it, the flame small and weak. You place the bread beside it and watch the light flicker across the crust. For a moment, it almost looks golden. You take another bite, chew slowly, swallow carefully. You think about people who didn't last this long. You remember neighbours who used to complain about ration lines, about cold, about noise. Now their windows are dark. You haven't seen them in weeks. No one knocks on their doors anymore. When the smell changes in the hallway, you know what it means. Sometimes, when you can't sleep, you count the seconds between your heartbeats. It reminds you that you're still here. You wonder how much longer your body can keep this up. You know the answer, but you don't think it. Thinking wastes energy too. You hear footsteps in the hallway. Someone stops outside your door. You freeze. Then the sound moves on. It's probably nothing. Just another person searching for warmth, or water, or anything left behind. You go back to staring at the candle. The flame flickers, stretches, shrinks. You watch it until your vision blurs. Your mind starts drifting again, imagining food. Not in detail, not like a dream. Just colours, shapes. The memory of fullness. You imagine a bowl filled with soup, steam rising. You imagine lifting the spoon. You imagine the warmth spreading through your chest. You hold that image as long as you can. Your stomach growls quietly, but you ignore it. You've learned to treat hunger like a background noise. You can't silence it, but you can tune it out. You breathe slowly, shallowly, conserving air the way you conserve everything else. The candle burns lower. The room grows darker. Somewhere, a clock strikes, though you don't know what time it's supposed to be. You haven't kept track for days. The hours blur together now, a steady rhythm of waking, waiting, pretending to eat, and sleeping. You finish the last of the bread and fold the paper it came in. You smooth it carefully, as if it's something precious. You put it in your pocket. You don't know why. Maybe it feels wrong to throw it away. You sit there for a long time after that, your hands resting on the table, your mind empty. The hunger returns, as it always does. You don't fight it. You just let it exist. You've learned that resisting makes it worse. You breathe, you wait, you remind yourself that this is how survival works now. One small, slow, deliberate moment after another. Outside, the snow keeps falling. The city stays silent. Somewhere, someone else is chewing the last of their bread, or stirring an empty pot, or lying in the dark pretending they're full. The air is cold enough to bite, the room's cold enough to echo. But there's still breath. There's still movement. There's still the art of eating nothing. And, somehow, it's keeping everyone alive just a little longer. The line forms before dawn. It always does. It stretches along the street, disappearing into the fog that hangs over the city. People move slowly toward it, shapes wrapped in coats, scarves and silence. No one knows exactly when the store will open, or if it will open at all. They just stand there, because standing means possibility. You wake before light, the air inside your room so cold it feels solid. You move slowly, every joint stiff, every muscle reluctant. You wrap the blanket around your shoulders and sit for a moment, breathing the thin air. Your mouth feels dry. You haven't spoken in days, not really. Words take effort. So does hope. You pull on your boots, cracked leather, tied with string, and go outside. The snow crunches under your feet, hard and brittle. The sky is grey, the buildings outlined in frost. You walk toward the sound of movement, faint and rhythmic. The shuffling of dozens of people adjusting their weight from one foot to the other, keeping circulation alive. That's how you find the queue. It's longer than yesterday. It's always longer. People join it without asking what it's for. The rumour spreads fast enough. Bread, flour, something edible maybe. It doesn't matter. Anything is worth waiting for. You take your place at the end, behind a woman wrapped in a fur coat that's too big for her, and a man holding a sack made from a curtain. The cold seeps up from the ground, through your boots. You shift your weight, just like everyone else. Your breath hangs in front of you, pale against the air. The queue doesn't move. You hear murmurs near the front, but they don't reach you. You can see only a few meters ahead, the backs of people, the curve of the street disappearing into fog. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then stops. The line is made of silence and exhaustion. People stand because they don't know what else to do. Some lean against walls. Some crouch, resting their arms on their knees. A few hold bags, pots or ration cards, clutching them close like they might vanish. You've learned not to ask questions. Asking costs energy. Hope costs even more. You just wait. The woman in front of you shifts slightly, glancing back. Her face is pale, her eyes hollow. She nods and you nod back. That's enough. Words aren't necessary anymore. Recognition is its own language. The hours crawl by. The light doesn't change much. It fades, returns, fades again, but it never really brightens. Snow falls softly, settling on shoulders and hats, melting slowly against the heat of bodies. No one brushes it off. Movement wastes strength. You think about how lines used to mean something different. Tickets, shops, post offices, normal life. Now a line means survival. It's a symbol of patience and desperation tangled together. People join lines without knowing what's at the end, because it's easier than sitting in the dark, wondering if there's nothing left anywhere. The queue doesn't move. It breathes. Every so often, someone coughs. A few people murmur, adjusting their scarves. The sound of boots shifting in snow becomes the only rhythm left. You look around. Some people have brought stools made from broken furniture. Others lean on walking sticks. A child stands beside his mother, his eyes half closed, his lips blue. She holds him by the hand. They don't talk either. Someone ahead collapses. It happens quietly. The body just folds, slow and heavy, into the snow. For a moment, no one reacts. Then 2 people step out, bend down, and lift the person to the side. The space closes. The line continues. The sound of breathing fills the gap. You don't ask what happened. You already know. A soldier passes by, his uniform layered with frost. He moves along the line, checking ration cards. He doesn't speak much. People hand over the cards automatically, their fingers trembling. He glances at each one, nods, moves on. When he reaches you, you hand him yours. He stamps it, returns it, and walks away. The stamp doesn't guarantee anything. It just confirms you're waiting. You look at the card again. It feels heavier than it should. It's the only thing connecting you to food. Losing it would be worse than losing money. Worse than losing warmth. You tuck it back inside your coat, deep in the inner pocket, and press your hand over it. The line shuffles forward. Maybe 1 step, maybe 2. You're not sure. You don't count. Counting makes time real, and time has become unbearable. You think about the first weeks of the siege, when the stores still had something to give. People argued then, shouted, pushed. Now there's no energy left for that. Anger requires calories. The city has run out of both. The woman in front of you speaks suddenly, her voice hoarse. "Do you think they'll open today?" she asks. You pause before answering. "Maybe," you say. She nods slowly. That's the whole conversation. It's enough to remind you that you still have a voice. You stand there for hours. The cold settles deeper into your body. You can feel it in your spine, in your teeth. Your feet go numb, then your hands. You don't move. Moving breaks the rhythm of endurance. You just wait. The man behind you mutters something, a name, maybe a prayer. His breath smells of alcohol, though you doubt it's real vodka. People have started brewing things from anything they can find. Fermented potato peels, rotted bread, even antifreeze. Some drink to forget the hunger. Most don't wake up. A faint sound breaks the monotony. The creak of a door opening somewhere up ahead. Heads lift, bodies stir. The line shifts forward, a wave of motion that feels unreal. For a moment there's energy again. You take a step, then another. The air feels sharper. You can hear voices, low and urgent. Then the door slams shut again. The sound echoes down the line. The movement stops. Someone says they ran out of bread. Someone else says they're bringing more. The words move backward like wind, changing as they go. By the time they reach you, no one knows which version is true. It doesn't matter. You stay where you are. Leaving would mean admitting defeat. The day drags on. You stop feeling your toes. Your fingers curl against your palms, stiff and white. You tuck them into your coat, breathing on them when you remember to. The woman in front of you sits down in the snow. You don't tell her to get up. You just watch. After a while she stands again, slower this time. A child starts crying somewhere near the front. The sound cuts through the air like glass. It's high and thin, not loud enough to be annoying, but loud enough to remind everyone what this really is. A city starving, one line at a time. The crying fades after a while. You don't see where they went. Someone passes through the crowd, selling something from under a coat. You can't see what it is. People whisper, exchange coins or scraps of fabric. You catch the word fat. You look away. You don't want to know what kind. By mid-afternoon, the fog thickens. You can't see the building at the front anymore. The world shrinks to the few faces around you, all blurred by breath and frost. The air smells like snow, iron, and faintly, of yeast. Maybe that's your imagination. You close your eyes for a moment, swaying on your feet. You dream while standing. You see tables, bright light, steaming bowls. You see yourself eating without hurry, spoon to mouth, heat spreading through your chest. Then someone bumps into you, and the image disappears. You open your eyes again. The queue hasn't moved. The soldier returns, walking down the line again. This time he's saying something. You strain to hear. "No more today," he mutters. The word ripple through the crowd, carried by whispers. No one yells. No one leaves immediately. People just stand, letting the words sink in. The woman in front of you exhales slowly. "Tomorrow then," she says. You nod. You know tomorrow will look exactly like today. You know you'll stand here again. You'll wake, you'll walk, you'll wait. That's what everyone does now. As the line begins to dissolve, people move quietly, slowly, like shadows returning to the walls. Some still linger, as if hoping the soldier was wrong. The snow starts again, small flakes catching in the dim light. You turn and begin the walk home. The streets are empty. The buildings are silent. You pass others carrying empty bags, pots, tins. They all move the same way. Heads down, eyes unfocused, steps slow. You think about how much energy it takes just to walk. You feel the weight of your own body, the way it's grown lighter, the way your clothes hang loose now. When you reach your apartment, you close the door and sit down. Your legs ache, your back stiff. You pull off your gloves and look at your hands. The skin is cracked, the nails blue. You rub them together, but the warmth doesn't come. You sit there, listening to the building creak in the wind. You light what's left of a candle stub, the flame flickering weakly. It casts just enough light to make the shadows move. You open your ration card, run your fingers over the stamp from today. It's proof of something, though you're not sure what anymore. You think about the queue again. The faces, the silence, the stillness. You think about how everyone waits every day, as if waiting itself might bring food into existence. The queue has become part of the city's rhythm, as fixed as the snow, as endless as the cold. You sit there, the candle burning low, your stomach hollow, your mind quiet. The hunger doesn't scream anymore, it just hums, steady and low. You close your eyes and see the line again. Grey coats, frozen breath, a door that never opened. You know you'll go back tomorrow. You'll stand again. You'll wait again. Because that's all there is to do now. Outside, the snow keeps falling. The wind keeps moving through the empty streets. And somewhere in the city, another queue is already forming, stretching out into the dark, full of people who no longer believe in food, but still believe in waiting. The snow doesn't stop anymore. It falls day after day, quiet and endless, covering everything until the city looks like it's been erased. It hides the streets, the benches, the tram tracks, the signs. It hides the bodies too. That's what people say now. That the snow is kind because it covers what the living can't bury. You wake to the sound of the wind pushing against the window. The glass rattles softly, but the frost keeps it sealed. The air inside is still frozen in place. You move your hand, brushing the blanket from your chest. Your skin sticks to the fabric. The room feels smaller again, the walls closer, as if the cold is pressing them inward. You sit up slowly. The light outside is dim and colourless. It's hard to tell morning from evening anymore. You walk to the window and scrape a small circle clear with your fingernail. The view is the same as yesterday. White on grey on white. The snow has piled so high that the street looks flat, as if the city were buried under a single unbroken sheet. You can see faint shapes in the distance, people moving carefully, shovels in hand. They're clearing a path through the courtyard. Not for walking, no one walks much anymore, but for collecting. The city calls it removal. That's the word printed on the posters. They say it politely, the way bureaucracies always do, as if words can make it cleaner. You get dressed, layer by layer, the same clothes you've worn for weeks. The coat feels lighter each day. The scarf smells faintly of smoke. You pull on your boots and step into the hallway. The air there feels colder than inside. You walk down the stairs slowly, your hand brushing the railing, the metal biting through the glove. Outside, the snow is knee-deep. You walk carefully, lifting your feet high, the motion slow and heavy. The air bites your face, the wind dragging fine power into your eyes. The city looks motionless. You can't hear engines anymore, only footsteps and the scrape of shovels. In the courtyard, 2 men are lifting something onto a sled. They move without talking, their movements slow, practiced. One holds a corner of a blanket, the other ties a rope around it. You look away. You've seen it before. Everyone has. It's what happens when there's no ground soft enough to dig. The snow takes everything in eventually. It piles higher over the weeks, smooth and perfect, concealing what lies beneath. You start to recognise the shapes it makes. Small mounds that weren't there before, covered by another layer overnight. You stop noticing after a while. The mind edits what it can't bear to hold. You help where you can. Everyone does. The city has become its own caretaker. There's no ceremony, no prayers, no names. You just carry, drag, cover, move on. The snow makes it easier. It keeps things quiet. You pass by a cart in the street. It's wooden, pulled by 2 people with ropes around their shoulders. The wheels don't turn. They slide through the packed snow. On the cart are shapes wrapped in fabric, piled neatly. A soldier walks beside it, marking names on a clipboard. The ink freezes between lines. No one stares anymore. No one crosses themselves. It's just another part of the city's rhythm, as ordinary as fetching water or standing in line. Death has become logistical. You stop counting the days because they all look the same. You walk toward the river. The air feels heavier near the water, the wind sharper. The holes cut through ice are smaller now, surrounded by walls of snow. A group of people stand nearby, not for water this time, but to use the ice as storage. The ground is too hard, the earth frozen solid, so they keep things there instead. Records, clothes, sometimes the things they can't yet part with. You stand for a moment, watching the snow fall into the holes. The flakes melt instantly when they touch the black water, vanishing without a sound. You think about warmth, how easily it disappears, how fast the cold swallows it. You turn and start walking back. The streets are lined with drifts so high they touch the first floor windows. People move through narrow paths, single file, their breath steaming in the air. Sometimes you hear a shovel strike something hard. Sometimes you don't ask what it was. You reach the corner where the bakery used to stand. The windows are broken, the sign half buried. Someone has written words in the snow near the door. Do not forget. You look at them for a long time. The letters are uneven, carved with the end of a stick. The wind begins to blur them, softening the edges. You watch until they disappear. You keep walking. Your legs ache. Your breath fogs the scarf until it turns stiff. You pass a group of children playing in the snow. They're quiet, not laughing, just rolling small piles into larger ones. you realise what they're building only when you see the shape. It's not a snowman, it's a wall. A small barrier, made to keep the wind out of a doorway. They work together silently, their faces red, their gloves torn. You keep walking. At home you light a candle. The flame flickers weakly. You hold your hands near it, not for warmth, but for proof that light still exists. You listen to the faint sounds of the building settling, the creak of the walls, the groan of the pipes. Somewhere above, you hear footsteps. Then silence again. You sit by the window, watching the snow fall. The flakes move slowly, drifting sideways in the wind. You focus on one until it disappears against the glass. You try to count how many have fallen, but it's impossible. The city is covered in millions of them, each one small, cold, and quiet. You think about how the snow covers everything the same way, the living and the dead, the roofs and the streets, the good and the bad. It doesn't choose, it doesn't care. It just falls, layer upon layer, until the world looks peaceful again. From a distance, maybe it even looks beautiful. You close your eyes for a moment. The candle flame wavers. You can hear the faint sound of wind whistling through the cracks in the window frame. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders and breathe slowly. Tomorrow you'll wake to the same light, the same silence, the same snow. You'll walk outside again, step over the mounds, follow the narrow paths carved between them. You'll see the sleds move quietly down the streets, the shovels lifting, the figures bending, the endless rhythm of it all. And through it, the snow will keep falling, soft and unending, hiding what the city can't face, smoothing every sharp edge, blanketing every memory. A white shroud stretched across Leningrad, heavy and merciful, giving the living one small illusion that what's gone is sleeping, not lost. The radio still sits in the corner of the room. It hasn't worked properly in weeks, but you keep it anyway. It's heavy, wooden, with a fabric speaker that's torn in one corner. The knobs are stiff from cold. Sometimes when you touch them, they freeze to your fingers. Still, you turn it on every morning, the same way you used to. It's not habit anymore. It's something like hope. When the dial hums to life, the sound that fills the room isn't a voice but static. Soft, constant, endless. You listen anyway. The noise feels alive. It moves. It breathes. It reminds you that somewhere beyond this frozen city, something is still happening. You sit close to it, hands on your knees, waiting for words to rise out of the noise. Then, faintly they do. A voice, thin and distant, slipping between bursts of static. The same voice you've heard before. A man. Calm, deliberate, never raising it. He reads slowly as if speaking to ghosts. Sometimes it's news from the front, sometimes a list of names, sometimes just the weather. You know the reports are old, weeks delayed, maybe more, but you still listen. The voice speaks of courage, of resilience, of victory coming soon. It says the city will endure. It always says that. You don't believe it anymore, but belief isn't the point. The sound is. The rhythm of words, the trace of life carried through the frozen air. People say the broadcasts come from a bunker somewhere under Smolny. They say the announcers sleep beside the machines, taking turns reading through the night, their breath fogging the microphones. They say even when the city lost power, the radio kept going, running on backup generators scavenged from factories. No one knows how true that is, but everyone listens. In the apartments around you, behind the thin walls, you can sometimes hear other radios faintly, the same voice echoing through the building in uneven sync. The signal drifts, fading in and out, words slipping over each other until it sounds like a chorus of ghosts repeating the same line over and over. Leningrad will not fall. You close your eyes and let the sound fill the room. The static feels like snowfall, constant, soft, surrounding everything. The voice keeps speaking. You imagine the man on the other end, pale, tired, sitting in a cold booth, reading words he doesn't write, his breath turning to frost on the microphone. Maybe he knows no one is really listening. Maybe he does it anyway because silence would be worse. Sometimes the radio plays music. Not often, but when it does, the sound feels unreal. A scratchy recording, faint piano notes, a few bars of a song from before the war. You don't recognise it, but you hum along anyway. The melody is slow, uneven, full of space. You think about how long it's been since you heard anything beautiful. The music fades, the static returns, and you feel the absence like a physical thing. You remember the first winter of the siege, when the radio was still strong. Back then, the voices were confident, bright. They gave instructions, orders, encouragement. They told people where to collect rations, where to bring the wounded, how to build makeshift stoves. The broadcast sounded like control. Now the tone has changed. The words are slower, softer. The voice doesn't shout anymore. It murmurs. It reads the names of heroes, the words of poems, sometimes fragments of letters from soldiers at the front. It feels less like instruction and more like prayer. You've started sleeping near the radio. The sound helps. The silence of the city can be unbearable. The static makes it feel like someone is breathing beside you, steady and patient. You let it run through the night until it fades into the background of your dreams. Once, during a bombing, you heard the radio change. The broadcast cut off mid-sentence, replaced by a piercing tone. You waited in the dark, heart pounding, listening to the whistle of shells falling somewhere nearby. The building shook. The window cracked. You covered your head and waited. When it was over, the radio came back on. The same voice, the same calm tone, as if nothing had happened. You sat up and laughed quietly. It felt absurd that the radio could survive what people couldn't. You think about how strange it is that this box, this fragile machine, has become the city's heartbeat. When the power lines go out, the streets are silent. But as long as the radio still hums, people believe the city is alive. Some say the sound itself keeps them going, a reminder that they're not completely forgotten. You remember when they broadcast Shostakovich's 7th Symphony? You weren't there, but you've heard the story so many times, it feels like memory. The musicians were half-starved. Some fainted during rehearsals. The instruments froze. But they played anyway. The sound was sent through loudspeakers across the city. Soldiers stopped firing to listen. People said it was the only time the siege felt human again. You imagine that sound now, spreading through the empty streets, over the snow, over the ruins. A song strong enough to reach the enemy lines. You wonder if it really happened that way, or if it just became legend, because people needed it to. You decide it doesn't matter. Tonight the radio crackles again. The voice returns. You sit by it, candle burning low, the flame flickering against the dial. The announcer reads something, a poem maybe, or a message. His tone doesn't change, but his words catch your attention. He says, "To those who endure, hold on. The city stands. You are not forgotten." You stare at the radio, your hand resting on its wooden side. You know he's reading from a script written by someone you'll never meet. You know it's propaganda. but the words settle somewhere inside you, low and steady, like warmth. You don't cry, you just listen. The static grows louder again. The signal fades. When you turn the knob carefully, searching for the voice, but it's gone. All that remains is the hum, steady, endless, soft. You leave it on. You can't stand the silence anymore. The candle burns down to a stub. The flame flutters, then dies. The room goes dark, but the radio stays alive, whispering its endless snowstorm of sound. You lie down, pulling the blanket over your shoulders, listening to the static fill the air. It becomes part of your breathing. You match its rhythm. You drift somewhere between waking and sleep. You imagine the voice will return any second now, saying something new, something different, something better. It doesn't, but you wait anyway. And somewhere across the city, behind other frosted windows, other radios hum the same endless sound, keeping the silence at bay, one faint heartbeat at a time. The children still wake up early, not because they're full of energy, not because they're excited for the day. They wake up because the cold doesn't let them sleep for long. They move quietly under their blankets, listening to the wind outside, the creak of the walls, the faint hum of the radio through the floorboards. For a moment they lie still, trying to remember what day it is. It doesn't matter. Days are the same now. You see them sometimes in the stairwells or in the courtyards, moving slowly, bundled in coats that used to belong to someone bigger. Their sleeves hang past their hands. Their shoes are patched with bits of cloth and wire. They don't run anymore. Running wastes energy. They walk carefully, heads down, as if even their bones have learned to conserve movement. Before the siege, children filled the streets of Leningrad. The sound of them playing echoed off the stone buildings, laughed bouncing down every alley. Schools rang bells, teachers shouted from open windows. You remember that sound? The hum of life, ordinary and full. Now the schools are closed, the playgrounds are buried under snow, the laughter is gone. Some of them still try to play. You've seen it. A few gathering in a corner of a courtyard, drawing in the snow with sticks, pretending the lines mean something. One throws a snowball, but it crumbles in his hand before it lands. They don't laugh when it happens. They just look at it for a second and move on. Hunger has changed them. Their faces are pale and sharp, their eyes too large for their heads. Their cheeks have lost the softness of youth. Their voices sound older, even when they whisper. They've learned to stand in lines, to carry buckets, to fetch water, to wait. Waiting is their game now. You remember a boy from the building across the street? He used to sit on the steps every morning, wrapped in a blanket, holding a tin cup. He never begged. He just sat, watching people pass. Once you gave him a piece of bread, the size of a coin. He took it carefully, as if it might break, and said thank you without looking up. The next day he wasn't there. There are fewer children every week. The ones who remain move through the city like small ghosts, quiet and watchful. Some are alone now, their parents gone, or too weak to leave their beds. You see them carrying buckets to the river, dragging sleds half their size through the snow. They've become smaller versions of adults, learning the same slow patience, the same quiet endurance. There's a children's hospital nearby, or what's left of it. The windows are broken, covered with cloth. Inside, the air smells of medicine, dampness, and smoke. You pass by sometimes and hear muffled voices. A nurse shouting orders. A child crying softly. You never look inside. You've seen enough to imagine what's there. The children who can still speak talk about food the way others talk about fairy tales. They describe things they've never tasted. Chocolate, oranges, cakes. They ask if those things were real or just stories. You tell them yes, they were real. They nod like they're trying to believe you. You've heard of schools that still try to meet. Teachers gathering a handful of children in basements, reading from old books by candlelight. Lessons about arithmetic, geography, poetry. The children sit quietly, their faces pale in the flickering light, listening without understanding. The teachers keep reading, because silence feels heavier than words. Some of the older children work in the factories. They sort scrap metal, sweep the floors, carry boxes too heavy for their small bodies. Their fingers are thin, their nails broken. They don't complain. Work gives them ration cards. It gives them a reason to stand up each morning. You remember walking past one of those factories once, hearing a faint sound inside. Not machinery, that had stopped long ago, but singing. A group of children's voices, weak but together, singing a song about victory. You stopped and listened for a moment. The melody was uneven, the words slurred from exhaustion, but it was a song in this city that counted for something. At night, you sometimes hear a child crying somewhere in the building. The sound is muffled, thin. No one goes to check anymore. Everyone saves their strength. The crying usually stops after a while. You tell yourself they fell asleep. You don't think about the other possibility. You see a girl one morning standing in the snow near a broken fountain. She's maybe 8, maybe 10. It's hard to tell anymore. Her hair is hidden under a scarf, her face grey with cold. She holds a small doll made from cloth and string. The doll has no eyes, just 2 dark stitches. The girl stands there for a long time, not moving. Then she places the doll on the edge of the fountain, brushes snow from its head, and walks away. You watch her go until she disappears around the corner. The doll stays there for days, slowly covered by snow. Sometimes you think about what childhood means in a place like this. Once it meant laughter, imagination, curiosity. Now it means learning to be quiet, learning to wait, learning not to hope too loudly. The children grow up in a city that no longer remembers what warmth feels like. They inherit silence. You've heard stories of schools turning their basements into shelters during bombings, teachers writing names on scraps of paper and pinning them to children's coats in case someone needs to identify them later. The papers often blow away when the walls collapse. No one ever finds them. You think about your own childhood, summer days by the river, the sound of music from open windows, the taste of fresh bread. It feels like remembering someone else's life. You wonder if the children here will have memories at all when this ends, if they'll ever be able to imagine a world where hunger isn't normal. In the evenings, the radio still plays. Sometimes it tells stories meant for children, fairy tales read by actors with steady voices. The words drift through the static, soft and slow. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, the children sit by the speakers, listening quietly. Some close their eyes. You can't tell if they're picturing castles or if they're just resting their heads because they're too tired to stay upright. The stories always end the same way, with light, warmth, safety. When the broadcast ends, the static returns, and the children stay still, waiting for more. The fairy tale fades, and the cold seeps back in. You think about how the city has taught them to live, without expecting endings. They don't ask when it will be over. They don't ask why. They've stopped asking altogether. They just keep moving, one small step after another. Through the snow, through the hunger, through the quiet. Outside, you see them again. A group walking in single file down the street, pulling a sled. It's empty. You don't ask where they're going. You just watch them disappear into the fog. Small figures swallowed by the white air. You sit by the window for a while after that. The snow falls softly, blurring the outlines of the buildings. Somewhere below, a child hums a song, low and uneven, the tune barely holding together. You listen until it fades. The city breathes slowly around you. The cold presses in. The candle flickers once, twice, then steadies. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, close your eyes, and let the silence settle. The children are still out there, scattered through the frozen streets, carrying water, standing in lines, dragging sleds, waiting for something they've never seen. A spring that feels like a story. A world where snow isn't a burial ground. A time when childhood might exist again. The letters arrive without warning. They're small, folded, thin as air. The paper looks almost translucent. The ink faded. They come through the blockade somehow. A handful of them, weeks old, carried by runners, hidden in trucks, passed from hand to hand until they reach the city. By the time they arrive, the words inside have already aged, but still, people wait for them. They wait the way they wait for bread, for news, for anything that connects them to life beyond the walls of ice. You hear about them first from a neighbour. She says the post office opened again, just for a day, that someone brought a new bag of letters from the front. You don't ask how it's possible. Things like that aren't supposed to happen anymore, but sometimes they do. You put on your coat, wrap your scarf, and walk there slowly. The post office doesn't look like one. The windows are broken, the counter's empty, the floor covered in frost. Inside, a soldier stands behind a table, reading names from a list. His voice is flat, tired, almost mechanical. People crowd around, waiting, straining to hear their own names. Most don't. You don't either. But you stay anyway. The woman beside you clutches a crumpled envelope. She's already read it 100 times. The corners are worn, the ink smudged. You see her mouth move silently, tracing the words as she reads them again. It doesn't matter that she knows them by heart. Reading is a way of keeping the person alive for another few minutes. Someone at the front of the room starts to cry. They've been handed a letter. They hold it like it's something fragile, as if one wrong move might make it vanish. The others step aside quietly, giving space. No one congratulates them. Happiness feels strange here. When you finally leave, you walk past a woman sitting on the steps outside, reading her letter aloud. Her voice trembles, but she doesn't cry. The letter is from her husband. He writes about the cold, the fighting, the waiting. He tells her to stay strong. He says he dreams of her every night. You listen for a moment, then move on. It feels like intruding. Back home, you sit by the window. You think about writing a letter yourself. You've tried before, but the words never come easily. Well, what can you say from inside a city that's dying? You pick up a piece of paper, rough, grey, torn from an old notebook. You hold the pencil loosely, staring at the blank surface. The candle flickers beside you. The light makes the page look golden, warm. You start with the date. You're not sure what it is? You guess. Then you write a greeting. Simple, formal. Your handwriting looks strange, smaller than you remember. You tell them you're alive, that you're managing, that the city still stands. You don't mention the hunger, the cold, the silence. You write about small things instead. The sound of the radio, the snow on the rooftops, the fact that the bakery opened yesterday. You tell them you're waiting, that you think of them often. You fold the page carefully, as if folding something fragile, and slip it into an envelope. You know it will never leave the city. There's no one left to carry it. But writing makes it real. It gives shape to the waiting. The next day, you visit another neighbour, an old woman who collects the letters that can't be delivered. Her table is covered with them, stacked neatly in bundles tied with string. Some are unopened, others worn at the edges. She says it feels wrong to throw them away. She keeps them like relics. Sometimes she reads them aloud in the evenings to anyone who wants to listen. You sit with her one night while the candle burns low. She reads slowly, her voice steady. The letters sound alike. The same words of love, of hope, of endurance. Soldiers writing to wives, to mothers, to children. Some talk about the cold, some about the smell of gunpowder, some about dreams of returning home. The words are simple, but in the quiet room they feel enormous. She finishes one and sets it aside. You ask if she ever hears back from the people who wrote them. She shakes her head. No one answers from the front, she says softly, and no one here has the strength to reply. The letters become a kind of bridge between two silences, one out there in the frozen forests and trenches, the other here in the city. They travel slowly, and by the time they arrive, half the people they're addressed to are gone. Still, they're read. People gather to hear them, even when they know the names don't belong to anyone they know. The words matter more than the ownership. You remember one in particular. It was short, only a few lines, written in careful handwriting. The soldier wrote, "If you hear this, I'm still alive. If you don't, remember that I tried to come home." You think about that sentence often. It feels like something meant for everyone. The letters are full of love, but it's a strange kind. Distant, stripped of softness. Love here isn't about tenderness anymore. It's about endurance. It's the decision to keep waiting even when you know the person might never return. Sometimes, when the radio goes quiet, people read letters aloud in the stairwells. The sound drifts through the building. One voice reading, the others listening in silence. The words mix with the sound of wind against the windows. For a few minutes, the building feels warmer. You've heard stories of letters being found in the ruins after bombings, bits of paper caught under rubble, ink blurred by melted snow. Some are too damaged to read. Others are half intact, a few lines surviving. People keep them anyway, folded in their pockets like charms. You find yourself thinking about words more than food now, about the way they survive when everything else disappears, about how fragile they look and how stubborn they are. You imagine them drifting through the blockade, carried on the air, landing softly somewhere beyond the front. At night, you open your own letter again, the one you wrote but never sent. You read it under the candlelight, slowly, the same way others do. You read it as if someone else wrote it to you. You trace the lines with your finger, the paper thin as skin. When you finish, you fold it again and place it under the radio. The static hums softly in the background. The candle flickers. You listen for a moment to the faint rhythm of your own breathing, to the low, steady hum of the machine. Somewhere far away, another voice might be reading another letter. To someone who's still waiting. To someone who never will. You close your eyes. The air feels still. The snow outside presses against the windows, muting every sound. The letters lie in their stacks across the city, unopened, unread, unfinished. The quiet proof that even in a place where warmth and food have vanished, words still find a way to exist. And for now, that's enough. The building has gone quiet again. The footsteps that used to echo in the stairwell are gone. You can tell how many people are still alive by how the floorboards sound. Once there were voices, doors opening and closing, the creak of movement. Now there's only the wind pressing against the windows and the slow drip of melting frost from the ceiling. You hear something in the hallway. Not voices, not conversation, just a dull sound. You open your door and look out. A neighbour is dragging something heavy down the stairs. The sound of the weight bumping against each step is slow and steady. You know what it is before you see it. You've heard the sound before. The stairwell is cold, the walls are streaked with damp, the plaster cracked. The air smells of smoke and dust. The light that filters in from the small window near the landing is dim and grey. You stand still for a moment, holding onto the railing, watching as your neighbour pulls the shape down the steps. It's wrapped in a blanket. The end of the blanket leaves a dark trail behind it on the wood. No one speaks. You nod to each other. The work is heavy. You help. The blanket slips once, revealing a hand, pale, still curled slightly inward. You cover it again. Together you drag the shape to the landing, then down another flight. The sound is rhythmic now. The thud, the pause, the breath. The building groans around you. At the bottom of the stairs you stop to rest. The neighbour leans against the wall, breathing hard. His face is thin, his lips cracked. He says quietly, "I can't carry them any farther." You nod again. He sits down on the step, head in his hands. After a minute, you pull the blanket the rest of the way yourself, through the hallway and out the door. Outside, the air is colder, sharper. The snow creaks under your boots. You drag the blanket to the edge of the courtyard, where other shapes lie, half covered in snow. You leave it there carefully, flattening the edges. You stand for a moment, looking at the mound. Then you turn and walk back inside. There's no ceremony. No one prays. There isn't time, and there isn't strength. The city has turned burial into a kind of routine. When someone dies, they stay in their apartment for a day, maybe two. Then the body is taken to the stairs, and from there, when someone can manage it, to the courtyard. The ground is too hard to dig, so the snow takes them. At first, people left notes pinned to the blankets, names, dates, short messages. Now there's no paper left, no ink. The faces are the only record. When the snow covers them, they disappear completely. The city remembers by forgetting. You pass others on the stairs as you climb back up. Some are carrying buckets of water. Some are just sitting, too tired to move. They don't look at the shapes in the corners anymore. The space between life and death has grown small. The difference is mostly movement. You step carefully over a pair of boots left by a door. They're empty, lined neatly side by side. Someone has written a name on the wall beside them. The letters are crooked, fading. You run your finger over them without thinking, then keep walking. Back in your room, the air feels thicker. You sit down near the window, trying to catch a breath. Your hands tremble, not from cold this time, but from the effort. You pour a little water into a cup, the ice cracking as it melts. You drink slowly, staring at the window pane. The frost has formed new patterns overnight. Sharp lines, branching out like veins. You hear another sound from below. Another thud on the stairs. Someone else is doing what you just did. The rhythm is the same. The building itself has learned the sound. You wonder how many people live here now. You could count the apartments with smoke coming from the chimneys, but it wouldn't matter. The number changes every day. You think about how, months ago, people used to cover the dead quickly, out of fear. They were afraid of what hunger might do to the living. Now there's no fear left, only exhaustion. The dead are part of the landscape, like the snow, like the broken trams, like the empty streets. They exist quietly without surprise. You've heard that there are collection teams now. Groups of men with sleds who move through the city, picking up bodies from courtyards and stairwells. They load them carefully, stack them, and take them to the outskirts where pits have been carved into the frozen ground. Sometimes they return. Sometimes they don't. The cold preserves everything. The city waits for spring to finish what it can't. You remember the first time you saw someone die in front of you. It was early in the siege, when people still talked to strangers. A man collapsed in line outside the bakery. He fell forward without sound. For a moment, everyone froze. Then someone bent down to check him. No one screamed. No one called for help. There was nothing to do. The line closed again. The gap filled. You thought you'd never get used to that. Now you have. It's not cruelty. It's what hunger does. It teaches people to move slowly, to save their strength, to look without reacting. Compassion requires energy, and energy is a luxury. You feel it yourself. The dullness, the way your mind drifts even when you see things that should matter. You don't stop caring. You just stop having the power to show it. You look down at your hands. The skin is dry, cracked, grey. You flex your fingers and watch them move stiffly, like they belong to someone else. You wonder how long the body keeps going out of habit after the will to survive has faded. Later that day you hear footsteps again. You open the door and see a woman sitting halfway down the stairs. She's holding someone's head in her lap, rocking slowly, whispering something you can't hear. You don't move closer. You stand quietly, your hand on the doorframe. After a while she stops rocking. You wait another minute, then close the door. The radio hums faintly in the corner. You turn the volume up, just enough to drown the sound of the stairwell. The voice on it is calm, reading news that feels like fiction. You let it wash over you. The words mean nothing, but they fill the air. When night comes, you light a candle. The flame flickers against the walls. You sit and listen to the building breathe. The creak of wood, the sigh of wind, the faint crack of ice shifting in the pipes. You think about the people who used to live here. The laughter, the arguments, the music that once came through the walls. You wonder if sound itself remembers. You close your eyes. You can still hear the dull rhythm of dragging, the soft thud of bodies against steps, the quiet voices of those who do the carrying. You think about how, in another place, another time, that sound would mean horror. Here, it means survival. It means the living are still strong enough to move the dead. The candle burns lower. The light fades. You lie down, pulling the blanket to your chin. You breathe slowly, trying to match the rhythm of the wind. The building settles again. The same soft creak. The same distant sound of movement on the stairs. And outside, beneath the snow, The city sleeps. Not alive, not gone, just waiting. Quiet as the people still inside it, listening to the same wind and breathing the same frozen air. You can measure survival in this city by weight, not time, not hope, not even willpower. Just grams. Every person you meet, every line you stand in, every day that passes revolves around one number, 125. You wake before light, though there's little difference between night and morning now. The cold presses into your body until you move, and moving hurts. You push the blanket aside, sit up, and stare at the ration card on the table. The corners are soft from use. The holes punched through it form a pattern you've memorised, the rhythm of your own endurance. The number is printed there, clear and cruel, 125 grams. That's your daily bread. Your reason to stand, to walk, to breathe. It doesn't look like much on paper. It looks even smaller in reality. You pull on your coat and wrap the scarf around your neck, the fabric stiff with frost. The air in the stairwell is colder than outside. You step carefully down, hand trailing the wall. You hear the echo of your own boots and nothing else. The smell of the building, wax, smoke, and dust, never changes. Outside, the queue is already there, forming in the grey dawn. The same faces, the same stillness. You take your place at the end, ration card in one hand, empty bag in the other. The bakery's windows are covered with boards. Only a small slit remains open near the counter. The snow drifts around people's legs as they wait. You think about what 125 grams means. It's a number that used to be meaningless, a measurement for nothing important. Now it's everything. People whisper about it the way they once whispered about wages, about fortunes. Some argue whether it's enough to live on. The answer depends on what you mean by live. When you reach the counter, the baker doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You hand over your card. He stamps it. The stamp makes a sound that feels heavier than it should, final, like a small verdict. He weighs your portion carefully. The scale creaks. He cuts a piece from a dark, dense loaf and slides it toward you on a scrap of paper. You thank him. He nods once. You hold the bread in your gloved hands. It's small, heavy, grey. You can smell the faint sourness, the bitter edge of burnt flour. You slip it into your pocket, guarding it as if it were gold. Then you turn and leave. The streets are empty again. The cold wind moves between buildings, carrying fine snow that stings your face. You walk slowly, counting each step, focusing on the weight of the bread against your chest. Every person you pass has the same walk. Head down, shoulders tight, protecting their pockets. Back in your room, you close the door and sit at the table. You take the bread out carefully and set it down. You stare at it for a long time. The silence in the room feels heavier than usual. You pick up the knife, though it's barely sharp anymore, and start to cut. The blade catches, tears instead of slicing. You divide it into pieces. Small, uneven, careful. The first piece you eat immediately, because waiting feels like a test you might fail. You chew slowly, each bite lasting longer than it should. The taste is the same as always. Sour, earthy, faintly metallic. You swallow and take a sip of water to make it go down. You stop after that. You wrap the rest in paper and hide it in the drawer. You'll make it last through the day. Maybe 2. Some people try to stretch it to 3, but most can't. The body has limits, even when the mind tries to forget them. The number 125 repeats in your head all day. It's everywhere, on the radio, on the posters, on people's lips. It defines what life is worth here. It decides who keeps standing and who doesn't. You think about how absurd it is that a city, once measured in factories, ships and art, now measures itself in grams of bread. You've heard people weigh their rations again after leaving the bakery, suspicious that the scales were wrong. Some claim they've been cheated, that they got 120, maybe 110. Others take a bite to test it, then regret wasting even that much. You've done it too. You always end up weighing hope against hunger, and hunger always wins. Sometimes people sell part of their ration, desperate for other things. A match, a candle stub, a handful of flour. Others trade pieces for news or medicine. You've seen deals happen quietly, quickly, like crimes. The exchange is simple. Grams for survival. You think about how different 125 grams looks depending on the day. Some days it feels like salvation. Other days it feels like mockery. You remember when the ration was higher? 250, even 300, back when there was still strength in the city. Now, 125 feels almost generous. You sit by the window, holding one of the smaller pieces between your fingers. You can see the frost patterns outside, the faint movement of snow falling through the air. You eat the piece slowly, pressing it against your tongue until it softens. You don't bite. You just let it dissolve, pretending it's more than it is. Hunger changes time. Minutes stretch, hours blur. You begin to think in intervals, before and after eating, before and after the ration line. Everything else fades. You plan your day around that small weight, the one certainty that repeats as long as the card holds out. You remember hearing someone on the radio say that the bread is sacred now, that it represents the strength of the people, the spirit of endurance. You don't disagree, but when you hold it in your hands, it doesn't feel sacred. It feels fragile, temporary. You eat it and it disappears. You never have enough time to be grateful. Once, you dropped your ration. It fell into the snow outside the bakery. For a second, you froze, staring at it, a dark shape against white. Then you bent down and brushed it off, piece by piece, careful not to lose a crumb. People around you watched but said nothing. Everyone understood. You held it in your palm afterward, your heart pounding, your breath visible in the air. You promised yourself it would never happen again. At night, you unwrap the last piece, small as a coin. You break it in half and eat it slowly. The candle burns low. The radio hums faintly. You close your eyes and chew, swallowing between breaths. You try not to think about tomorrow. You imagine the number again, 125, printed on your ration card, carved into your bones. You think about how light that is, how easily it could blow away if you dropped it, how much of a person it has to feed. You lie down on the bed, the blanket heavy over your body. You can still taste the bread, faintly bitter, lingering at the back of your throat. You think about how people measure time by meals, by bites, by crumbs. You think about how you've started doing the same. Outside, the snow falls again, silent, endless. Somewhere down the street, someone else is cutting their portion, weighing it carefully, dividing it, hiding it away. You can almost hear it. The quiet sound of knives against plates, the soft crinkle of paper, the faint rustle of wrappers folded and refolded. The whole city is eating in silence, one bite at a time. You breathe slowly, matching that rhythm. You think about tomorrow's line, tomorrow's 125 grams, tomorrow's small victory of staying upright. The weight of the bread sits in your stomach like a promise. Not hope, Not satisfaction, just continuation. You close your eyes and drift in and out of sleep, counting the number again and again. 125, the measure of hunger, the measure of life. And in the stillness of the night, beneath the snow-covered roofs, the city keeps breathing in the same quiet equation. One breath, one heartbeat, one ration at a time. You start to notice the neighbours more when the hunger grows quieter inside you. When the mind becomes slower, the senses sharpen. You hear things you didn't before. Footsteps at odd hours, whispers through walls, the scrape of furniture moved carefully in the night. It's strange how even in a city as still as this, there's always someone moving somewhere. The building has changed. The people who used to greet each other don't anymore. The polite words, the small exchanges, they've all been replaced by silence and listening. Trust disappeared around the same time as warmth. Everyone still depends on everyone else, but no one admits it. Rumours drift through the hallways like cold air. You hear them when you go for water, when you pass the stairwell, when you stand in line for bread. Someone always knows something. Someone always says they heard from a cousin, a soldier, a friend of a friend. The words come in fragments, passed along until they lose shape. They say the army will break through the blockade any day now. They say trains are coming, full of food. They say new rations are being printed. They say the Germans are starving too. They say someone was caught with a full loaf hidden under the floorboards. They say someone else was shot for stealing flour. They say there's a secret storehouse somewhere near the port. They say the Red Cross sent packages, but the officers took them first. You listen because it fills the time. The rumours become part of the rhythm of survival, like the cues, like the radio, like the endless snow. You don't believe them, but you let them live in your mind anyway. Sometimes they sound like hope, and that's enough. There's one neighbour you see more than the others. The woman from upstairs, the one who used to teach music before the war. She still carries herself like a teacher, calm, precise, as if every word matters. You meet her sometimes on the stairs. You talk quietly, briefly. She tells you she trades things now, just to get by. Her piano is gone. She burned the keys one by one. The last note she played still echoes in her memory. She says there are people in the city who can find anything. Salt, soap, sugar, even meat, though no one asks what kind. They move through the ruins at night, carrying bags, whispering to one another. They're not merchants exactly, not thieves either. They're something in between. People who remember how to find value when the rest of the world has forgotten what it looks like. She mentions a man she knows who sells things out of a basement 2 streets over. No one knows his name. You go there one evening, not out of greed but curiosity. The streets are almost empty, the air sharp, the snow crunching under your boots. The basement door is half hidden behind a broken fence. You knock once. No answer. You knock again. A voice tells you to wait. You hear a latch open, a shuffling of feet, and then a narrow slit of light appears. A man's face, thin and pale, eyes dark. He looks at you for a moment before stepping aside. Inside, the air is warmer, thick with the smell of smoke, and something sweet. Maybe dried fruit, maybe memory. You see a table in the corner, covered with scraps. Small things. Soap, matches, buttons. A tin of something unlabelled. On the shelf above you see bread. Not ration bread, but real bread. Golden at the edges, the kind you remember. He watches you looking. It's expensive, he says quietly. You don't ask how much. You know you can't afford it. You ask instead if he trades. He nods once, slowly. Depends what you have. You think about the few things left in your room. A spoon, a scarf, the old photograph in its cracked frame. You ask what he'd give for the scarf. He shakes his head. Too common. You ask about the spoon. He hesitates, then shrugs. Maybe a match or two. You realise how much value has changed. You realise how heavy a single match can feel. You leave without trading. He doesn't stop you. As you walk home, you think about the bread on his shelf. You wonder if he ever eats it, or if it's just something to remind him that food still exists. Back in the building, you hear voices from another apartment. A door opens briefly, releasing a smell. Faint, oily, unfamiliar. Someone must have found something to cook. The smell lingers in the hallway, pulling people toward it like gravity. You see two neighbours standing near the door, pretending to fix their boots, but really just breathing deeply. You do the same. The black market isn't a place, it's a feeling. It's the sound of quiet knocking, the look of hidden eyes, the smell of cooking that doesn't belong. It's what happens when need becomes stronger than rules. It moves through the city like smoke, invisible but everywhere. You've heard that soldiers sometimes bring things in from the front lines. Tins of meat, tobacco, medicine. They trade for jewellery, watches, anything that still glitters. There's no money left, only barter. The city's wealth has been reduced to objects small enough to fit in a pocket. One night, the woman from upstairs knocks on your door. She holds out a small bag. Inside are a few cubes of sugar, brown and hard. She says she traded an old ring for them. You offer her water, but she refuses. Save it, she says. You both sit quietly for a while, listening to the radio. Then she stands, thanks you for the company and leaves. You don't ask where she got the sugar. You don't ask what she'll do with it. Later, you take one cube out and set it on the table. You stare at it for a long time before putting it back. Some things are better imagined than consumed. Rumours continue to drift. Someone says they saw a truck bring flour into the city at night. Someone else says the soldiers guarding it disappeared. Someone whispers that the bakers are mixing sawdust into the dough now, that even the bread isn't what it used to be. You listen, nod, pretend not to care. But you remember every word. You start to recognise who trades and who doesn't. The ones who do move differently, quicker, sharper. Their eyes dart around when they walk. They know things the rest don't. They survive longer. Some call them criminals. Others call them smart. In Leningrad, there's no difference anymore. One day, you see a man in the courtyard with a sack over his shoulder. He looks strong, his cheeks not as hollow as most. He stops to rest, sets the sack down, and catches your eye. For a second, you both just look at each other. He nods once and says, "You didn't see me." You nod back. When he leaves, you notice something dark has spilled from the corner of the sack into the snow. You don't go closer. The city lives on whispers now. Every building has its stories about who's still alive, who's hoarding, who's trading with soldiers, who has something hidden behind the stove. You don't ask. The less you know, the safer you are. You start to understand that survival here isn't about strength or honesty. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to trust a rumour and when to let it pass, when to look and when to look away. At night, the building is quiet again. The radio hums faintly, the candle flickers. Somewhere nearby, you hear soft footsteps, the creak of a door. A murmur of voices, the clink of glass. You don't move, you don't listen too closely. You let the sounds blend into the cold. The black market is alive tonight, invisible, shifting through walls and stairwells, trading scraps of warmth in a city that has almost forgotten what warmth feels like. You close your eyes and breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the quiet. The rumours can wait for morning. The hunger will still be there. And the city, somewhere beneath the frost, will keep whispering to itself, one secret deal at a time. The kitchen is the smallest room in the apartment, but it feels like the centre of everything. The walls are lined with soot, the air heavy with the smell of smoke that never leaves. The stove in the corner hasn't burned properly in months. You keep it for the memory of heat, not for what it can still do. The pots are blackened, dented, their handles loose. Every mark on them tells the story of something boiled too long, scraped too thin, stretched too far. You wake before light, as always. You move quietly so the floorboards don't creak. The water in the kettle is frozen solid again. You break it with the back of a spoon, the sound dull and familiar. The first task of the day is always the same, finding something to put in the pot. The shelves are mostly empty. A few crumbs, a jar with a spoonful of salt, a bag of something that might once have been flour. You run your fingers along the shelf, feeling the fine dust left from ground grain. You scrape it up carefully and drop it into the pan. It makes no sound when it falls. The neighbours sometimes gather here. The walls are thin, and everyone can smell when anyone cooks. They bring what they have: a crust of bread, a handful of oats, a frozen potato the size of a fist. Everything goes into the same pot. No one talks much. Talking wastes energy. Someone stirs, someone watches. The sound of the spoon against the metal is the only rhythm that fills the air. You can't tell who owns what anymore. The food belongs to whoever is still standing when it's done. You've learned how to cook nothing. You fill a pot with water, add a pinch of salt, a scrap of something dry, and wait. The longer you boil it, the thicker it seems. Steam rises and fills the room, and for a moment it feels like warmth. You hold your face above the pot, breathing it in. The steam smells faintly of iron and dust, but it's something. Sometimes people bring strange things to cook. Glue, leather, shavings from old furniture, bark scraped from trees. You boil them all, hoping the heat turns them into food. It doesn't, but you pretend. Pretending is a skill now. There are rules in a siege kitchen. Small, unspoken ones. Whoever brings the most gets the first taste. Whoever stirs the longest gets the last. Everyone else waits. No one complains. The soup, when it's ready, is thin and grey. You take turns, passing the spoon from hand to hand. Everyone takes one mouthful, maybe two. Then you stop, because if you finish it all now, there'll be nothing left for tomorrow. The kitchen has become the only place in the building where people gather. It's not because of warmth. There isn't any, but because of the illusion of it. When the pot boils, when the water moves, it reminds people that life still happens here. Even hunger can sound alive. You remember the kitchens before the siege, full of noise, smells, laughter. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of frying oil, the sound of music from a radio in the corner. You remember setting the table, the rhythm of meals. That memory feels like it belongs to another person. Now, every movement is careful. You measure every drop, every crumb. You scrape the edges of the pot with the back of a spoon to collect what clings there. You eat quietly, eyes down, as if afraid to draw attention. There's one pot that never leaves the stove. It's been used so often that its surface has turned black. The bottom is warped, the handle cracked. No one remembers where it came from. It just stays there, always waiting. When there's nothing to cook, people fill it with water anyway, to give their hands something to do. The water boils down to nothing, leaving behind a thin film on the sides. People scrape that too. It tastes bitter, metallic. They say it helps. They say anything helps. The kitchen has its own rhythm. The day begins with silence, then the sound of shuffling feet as people arrive, then the scraping of metal, the splash of water, the soft hiss of steam. The smell changes through the day, sometimes like dust, sometimes like damp wood, sometimes like nothing at all. You learn to listen to the pot. You can tell when it's ready by sound, the small bubbling, the shift in tone. You don't need to see it. You know it by heart. The kitchen teaches patience better than hunger does. Sometimes people bring bones, old, dry ones found in the street or dug from forgotten corners. They boil them for hours until the water turns cloudy. Then they drink it slowly like medicine. You've done it yourself. The taste stays in your mouth for days. It's not pleasant, but it's proof that you can still swallow. The radio in the corner sits silent most of the time, but when it works, someone turns it on. The voice reads news, or poetry, or weather. No one listens to the words, they just listen to the sound. It blends with the noise of the spoon and the bubbling pot. It makes the kitchen feel less empty. There's a cat that used to visit once, slipping in through the window. It hasn't come for weeks. Someone said they saw it near the river. No one asked what happened to it. The absence feels heavier than the presence did. When the food is ready, if you can still call it food, you pour it into cups, chipped and mismatched. Everyone takes one and sits in silence. You can hear the faint sound of breathing, the quiet scraping of spoons. The liquid is thin, the colour of rust, the taste faint and earthy. It doesn't fill you. It just stops the shaking for a while. Afterward, someone always says thank you. It's not about gratitude. It's about keeping the illusion that this is still a meal, that this is still life. Then people stand, slowly, and leave. The kitchen empties. The air cools. The sound fades. You stay behind sometimes, cleaning the pot, wiping the table, arranging things that don't need arranging. You look at the empty shelves, the dark stove, the candle burned halfway down. You listen to the building, the sigh of wind, the distant creak of wood. You let the quiet fill you until it feels almost like peace. The kitchen is the only place where time still moves. The rest of the city is frozen, silent, waiting. But here, in this small room, something happens every day. Water boils. Steam rises. People gather. They stir. They share. They leave. It's not much, but it's motion. It's proof that the city hasn't completely stopped. You sit on the stool beside the stove, hands around a cup still warm from the pot. The steam fogs your face. The candle light flickers against the wall. You breathe in slowly, tasting the air. It's not comfort. It's not warmth. It's something smaller, continuation. Outside, the wind pushes against the window. The snow whispers against the glass. The city beyond is silent, grey, endless. But inside, in this small kitchen, a pot still boils. And that sound, faint, steady, familiar, is enough to remind you that people are still alive. The streets have stopped making sound. It happened slowly, so no one noticed at first. The trams went quiet when the power failed. The cars disappeared when the fuel ran out. The The voices faded one by one until the only noise left was the wind pushing snow across stone. The silence feels heavier now than the cold itself. It covers everything, pressing into walls, into faces, into thought. You still walk outside sometimes. You tell yourself it's for water, or for rations, or to check the radio tower. But really it's to remember what the street feels like under your feet. The snow lies thick and unbroken in some places, smooth and untouched, like a white sheet stretched over the city. In others, narrow paths have been carved by boots and sleds. You follow those paths because the snow elsewhere is too deep to cross. The city looks like a photograph now, frozen mid-breath. The statues wear caps of ice, their faces soft with frost. The shop signs are buried halfway up their letters. Windows are black or broken, curtains stiff with cold. Every sound you make echoes longer than it should. The crunch of your steps, the creak of leather, the faint click of a metal clasp. They all hang in the air and then disappear into nothing. You pass the bakery, where you once stood in line. The door is shut. A sign hangs crookedly in the window. The ink faded and streaked. You don't stop to read it. You've read it before, you keep walking. Every few blocks, you see sled marks in the snow. Dark lines where something heavy was dragged. They lead from doors to courtyards to alleys. You follow one for a while, your breath clouding in front of you. It ends near a pile of snow against a wall. You turn away. The silence has a way of distorting distance. You can hear things that aren't close, or maybe they aren't real. A door slamming, a faint shout, the ring of metal. Sometimes it's just the wind moving through the hollow buildings. Sometimes it's something else. You stop trying to tell the difference. You see few people now. When you do, they move slowly, heads bent, faces wrapped in scarves. They don't greet you. They don't look up. Everyone walks as though they're alone in the city. Sometimes you pass each other so closely that your shoulders almost touch, and still no words are exchanged. The silence is a kind of agreement. The snow hides the damage. The craters from the shelling are filled now, smoothed over, their edges softened. The ruins look peaceful. The bombed-out buildings are white and clean from a distance. You know what's underneath, but the snow keeps its secrets. You remember the sound of the city before all this. The trams, the laughter, the clatter of dishes from cafes, the music spilling out of open windows. It used to be loud, impatient, alive. Now you can hear your own heartbeat when you walk. Sometimes it startles you, that sound inside your chest. It reminds you that there's still something moving somewhere. At the corner near the theatre, you stop. The building still stands, though its columns are cracked and part of the roof has fallen in. The posters from old performances are still glued to the walls, their colours faded to pale grey. The faces on them are smiling, elegant, untouched by time. You look at them for a while, feeling the cold settle deeper into your bones. You walk on, the snow begins again. Small flakes at first, then heavier. They gather on your coat, on your gloves, on the tips of your eyelashes. You don't brush them away. They melt slowly, leaving damp spots that freeze again within minutes. You cross a bridge where the river used to flow freely. Now it's a solid sheet of ice, thick and opaque. You can see faint lines where people have walked across it, their tracks winding between piles of snow. Somewhere under that ice, water still moves, slow and dark. You imagine you can hear it, a faint, distant murmur under the silence. On the far side of the bridge, a tram sits abandoned on its tracks. Its windows are shattered, the metal shell coated in frost. Inside, the seats are covered in snow that drifted through the broken glass. You step closer, peer inside. There's a glove on one of the benches. You leave it there. Further down the street, someone has built a small fire in a metal drum. The flames flicker weakly, their light orange against the grey snow. A few people stand around it, their faces turned toward the heat. They don't speak. You walk past slowly, feeling the brief warmth on your cheek before it fades again. You think about how the silence has become its own kind of sound. It's not empty anymore. It has texture. It moves around you like breath. You can hear it pressing against your ears, filling the spaces between your thoughts. You wonder if the city feels it too, if the buildings are listening. At dusk, the light changes. The snow reflects what little remains of the sky, turning the streets into long corridors of pale blue. The air smells faintly of ash and cold metal. You can see your breath more clearly now, each exhale rising like smoke. You think about how easy it would be to imagine yourself the last person left here. The thought doesn't frighten you. It just feels true. You turn down a smaller street, narrower, darker. The snow here is untouched, smooth, untouched by feet or sleds. The air feels heavier, quieter. You walk through it slowly, your footsteps deep, each one erasing the last. The sound they make, crunch, pause, crunch, becomes the only rhythm left in the world. When you reach your building again, you stop at the door and look back. The street behind you is empty. The wind picks up, swirling snow through the air, covering your footprints. Within seconds, the path you took is gone. It's as if you never walked there at all. Inside, the stairwell smells of wax and damp stone. You climb slowly, your legs heavy, your breath shallow. The candle in your pocket has cracked from the cold. You light it anyway, watching the small flame fight against the draft. The wax melts unevenly, dripping down your glove. You sit by the window for a long time after that. The silence follows you inside. You can see the street below, still and white, no movement, no sound. The snow keeps falling, soft and endless, covering everything again. The city sleeps without dreams. The wind drifts through empty intersections, carrying small eddies of powder that dance briefly before vanishing. Somewhere far off, a distant explosion rolls across the air, then fades. The silence returns even heavier than before. You rest your head against the glass, the frost cold against your skin. You breathe slowly, your reflection faint in the dim light. For a moment, you think you see movement behind you. Just the flicker of the candle, nothing more. You close your eyes. Outside, the winter stretches on, and the streets remain silent. A frozen labyrinth that holds its breath, waiting for something that no one remembers how to name. The lake was never meant to be a road. It wasn't built, it wasn't planned, it just froze, solid, wide and silent, say, and the city decided to trust it. They called it the Road of Life. It sounded like something out of a story, something almost impossible, a line of movement across a sheet of ice connecting the starving city to the world beyond. You remember when the first rumours began. People whispered that trucks had crossed Lake Ladoga, that supplies were coming, that the blockade might finally break. The word spread faster than the truth. Some said it was already open. Some said it had failed. No one knew. You learned not to ask questions, just to listen. Then one morning you heard a sound. A low, distant rumble. Something new. Something that didn't belong to the city. You went to the window and waited. At first you thought it was thunder, but thunder doesn't last that long, and the sky was clear. It was the trucks. They moved slowly, one after another, across the frozen lake, small dark shapes against a white horizon. The sound reached the city like a heartbeat, faint and steady. People came out of buildings to listen. No one spoke. Some crossed themselves. Others just stood there, their faces pale and blank, as if they didn't believe their own eyes. The ice road began at the edge of the lake, miles away. Soldiers marked the route with branches and lanterns. Drivers followed the lights through the darkness, their headlights covered to avoid detection. They drove at night, when the cold was deepest and the ice strongest. The road wasn't smooth. It cracked, groaned, shifted under the weight. Some trucks made it across, some didn't. You heard stories from the drivers. Men who had crossed it once, twice, sometimes 10 times. They spoke in quiet voices, never proud, never afraid. They said the lake made sounds at night, deep, hollow noises like breathing. They said when the ice cracked, it echoed for miles. Some said they could hear the water below, black and restless, waiting. The trucks carried flour, sugar, fuel, ammunition, medicine. They carried hope too, though no one counted that officially. They came into the city slowly, covered in frost, engines straining. Soldiers unloaded them by hand. The supplies went to warehouses, to hospitals, to bakeries. The first real bread made from that flour was heavy and coarse, but people said it tasted like spring. You never saw the road yourself, but you imagined it often. You imagined the drivers leaning forward over the wheels, their faces lit by dim lanterns, the sound of chains rattling, the wind slicing across the frozen lake. You imagined the silence that came when the engine stopped and the ice creaked beneath them. You imagined how long those seconds must have felt. Sometimes the trucks went out full of people, the sick, the children, the old. They were evacuated from the city in convoys, wrapped in blankets, faces hidden from the cold. The trucks carried them across the same lake that had swallowed others whole. Some made it, some didn't. The road gave and took in equal measure. You've heard that they could see the stars clearly out there. With no city lights, the sky was wide and sharp, the stars bright enough to reflect on the ice. You think about that often. How strange it must have been to drive through the dark, surrounded by nothing but frozen light, knowing that below the water waited, and above the stars looked down like indifferent witnesses. The road didn't stay the same. Each day the ice shifted. Cracks opened and closed. Bombs fell from planes overhead, shattering sections of it into black holes that steamed in the cold. The drivers kept going anyway. The trucks that didn't return were replaced by others. The line moved, fragile but unbroken. You remember hearing one night that a convoy had arrived. People gathered in the square, thin and shaking, waiting for the announcement. When it came, it didn't sound like celebration. It was quieter. A single sentence read on the radio. "Supplies have reached the city." The voice didn't change tone. No cheering followed. People just nodded to each other and went back to their rooms. But the air felt different that night, heavier and lighter at the same time. Later, you saw one of the trucks parked near the warehouse. The paint was peeled, the wheels coated in ice. The windshield cracked. You ran your hand along the side of it, the metal freezing your glove to it for a moment. It was the first thing you'd touched in months that felt alive. Not warm, but purposeful. You stepped back and looked at it again, realising that something this ordinary could carry so much weight. The drivers didn't have uniforms that matched, or even proper boots. Some wrapped rags around their feet to keep from freezing. They didn't talk much when they came into the city. They unloaded, refueled, and left again. People called them ghosts of the lake. They existed somewhere between life and death, between the solid and the broken. The road worked in reverse too. It carried things out. People mostly. A few boxes of letters. Sometimes bodies, wrapped and stacked, frozen solid. The trucks drove both ways until the thaw came, until the ice began to soften. Then the lake reclaimed its silence. The sound of cracking ice returned, slow and deep. The drivers waited for winter again. Even now, when you think about it, the lake feels like a miracle that never pretended to be one. It didn't promise anything. It just existed. Frozen, dangerous, temporary. It gave the city a thin line of breath to hold on to. That was enough. You walk sometimes to the edge of the river, to where the road once began. The wind there is colder, sharper. You can almost see the line stretching out into the distance, vanishing into white. You stand there for a long time, listening. You think you can still hear it. The faint rumble, the groan of the ice, the low hum of engines moving through the dark. The city still calls it the road of life, though everyone knows what it really was. A path made of fear and necessity, held together by frost. It wasn't life itself. It was just a way to keep it going a little longer. You turn back toward the city. The wind follows you, pushing snow across the empty street. You walk slowly, counting your steps, breathing the air that tastes like metal and smoke. Somewhere far behind you, under the frozen lake, the road still sleeps. And above it, in the thin grey sky, the same stars wait for another winter. You start noticing the notebooks first. They appear in unexpected places. Tucked behind a stove, under a pillow, inside drawers filled with nothing else. Some belong to people who are still alive, others to those who aren't. The paper is always thin, the ink faint, the page is covered in small handwriting pressed deep into the fibres, as if the writer needed to leave a mark that the cold couldn't erase. You find one while helping to clean a neighbour's room. It's small, wrapped in cloth, tied with string. The cover is stained and soft from handling. You open it carefully. The handwriting leans to the right, narrow and deliberate. The first lines are dated from months ago. They begin like any diary might. Weather, daily routines, a list of things to do. The entries grow shorter after that. The handwriting changes too. Slower, shakier. By the end, the dates are gone. The words are fragments. Water, bread, still cold, no sound today. You close it gently and set it aside. You start to wonder how many people in this city have done the same thing, writing in the dark, under blankets, with frozen hands, just to remember what thinking feels like. The notebooks are not meant to be read. They're meant to make time visible. When everything else stops, words keep moving. Some write because it helps them stay sane. Others write to leave proof. You've heard that officials collect some diaries for records. They say they want to document what happened. Most people don't believe that. They think the notebooks disappear once they're handed over, stored somewhere no one will ever see them again. But people write anyway. You've seen sketches too. Small, rough drawings made in the margins of books or on scraps of paper. They show things that no one talks about aloud. A street buried in snow, a woman carrying a bucket, a loaf of bread divided in two, a child's face pressed against a window. The lines are simple, uneven, but they carry weight. You can tell they were made quickly, before the hands grew too stiff to hold a pencil. Some people hide their drawings. Others leave them where anyone can find them. You once saw one taped to a wall near the stairwell. A sketch of the river, black and cracked with ice. There was no name on it, no date, no message, just the image. Someone must have drawn it after seeing the water through the fog, trying to make the silence into something solid. You remember a man in the next building, an artist before the war. He still draws sometimes, though he has no supplies left. He uses charcoal from the stove, bits of burnt wood. His fingers are blackened from it. He draws on the back of ration cards, on paper torn from ledgers, on the walls of his apartment. The drawings fade as the soot rubs away, but he keeps making them. He says it's better than staring at nothing. You think about starting your own notebook. You look for paper, but there isn't much left. You tear a few blank pages from an old book, the spine already falling apart. You find a pencil stub and sharpen it with a knife. The graphite breaks easily. You start with the date, though you're not sure if it's right. You write slowly, your fingers stiff. The first entry isn't about hunger or cold, it's about sound. You write that the city has gone quiet again, that the snow has turned the streets into mirrors. You write about the radio still humming in the corner. You write because the act of putting words down feels like breathing. You don't write much after that. A few lines every few days. Sometimes only one word. The paper feels too valuable to waste. Still, you keep it near the bed, under your blanket, where the cold can't touch it completely. You tell yourself that as long as you can write something, even a single word, you haven't vanished yet. You hear that others are doing the same. Children keeping small diaries in pencil, nurses writing notes in hospital ledgers, soldiers leaving messages scrawled on the walls of ruined buildings. The city is filling itself with quiet witnesses. There are secrets in those pages too. People write what they can't say aloud, who they traded with, what they ate, what they saw. They confess to things that survival demanded. They write about stealing, about fear, about the things they lost before hunger even began. No one reads those entries now. Maybe no one ever will. But the words sit there, pressed into paper, waiting for air. You start noticing how people guard their notebooks. They keep them close, tucked under their coats, hidden from the cold and from each other. They never speak about what's inside. You can tell by the way they touch them, gently, with the same care they'd give to something alive. Once, you help an old man carry water from the river. On the way back, he slips on the ice. The bucket spills, the water freezes instantly across the ground. He falls hard, and when you bend to help him, a small book slides out from under his coat. He snatches it up before you can even reach for it. His hand shakes, but his voice is steady. "It's mine," he says quietly. You nod. You don't ask. You've started to realize that these notebooks are more than memory. They're resistance. Writing, even when no one will read it, means you still believe there's a future where someone might. It's the smallest act of defiance. To describe, to record, to keep language alive, when everything else is turning to silence. In the evenings, when the radio fades to static, you read the pages you've written. You don't edit them. You don't think about what they mean. You just look at the lines and remember the moments they came from. The candle burning low, the air heavy with smoke, the sound of the pencil scratching across the paper. You notice how uneven the handwriting is, how the letters slant as your hand trembled. You think about how handwriting itself is a form of life. You look at your few drawings too. They're simple. A window, a pot, a piece of bread, a street corner half buried in snow. They don't capture much, but they make the stillness visible. You keep them folded inside your notebook, pressed flat between the pages. When the candle burns out, you sit in the dark, holding the book in your hands. The paper feels warmer than the air. You press it against your chest, listening to your heartbeat. You think about all the other notebooks scattered through the city, hidden in walls, under floors, in drawers. You imagine them all breathing together, small hearts of paper keeping time inside the frozen buildings. You don't know if anyone will ever find them. Maybe they'll stay buried under the snow, forgotten. Maybe they'll survive, waiting for someone to read them years from now. It doesn't matter. They exist now. They're proof that people once spoke, once thought, once tried to leave a trace of themselves behind. You set your notebook beside the radio. The static hums softly. The pages flutter faintly in the draft. You close your eyes and breathe slowly, counting each sound. The wind outside shifts against the glass. The snow continues to fall, soft and endless, covering the city that is still writing quietly to itself, one word at a time. You don't notice it at first. It starts as a rumour, like everything else in this city. Someone in the bakery line whispers that the rations have changed. The words pass from person to person, soft as breath. You hear them behind you, from a voice too weak to sound certain. They've raised it, someone says. No one answers. No one reacts. Hope, by now, is something people carry carefully, like a fragile object that might break if spoken too loudly. You stand in line as usual. The air is cold, the snow piled high against the walls. The sky looks grey and still. The sound of boots in the snow makes a slow rhythm, the same as every morning. You keep your eyes down, your hands tucked into your sleeves. The line doesn't move faster than it ever does. At the door, the baker's assistant reads names from a list, his voice dull and even. The same faces, same quiet nods, the same rhythm of the stamp against paper. You hold your ration card tightly, pressing your thumb against the place where yesterday's mark still shows. You expect the same weight as always, 125 grams, dense and grey. When your turn comes, you hand him the card. He looks at it, then looks up at you. His hand hesitates for a moment. Then he takes the loaf behind him, larger, softer, and sets it on the counter. 200, he says quietly. You blink, not sure you've heard right. He nods once, confirming it. You take the bread in both hands, heavier than you remember. You don't say thank you. The word doesn't fit. You just nod and walk out, holding the loaf close to your chest, as if someone might take it. Outside, the wind catches your breath, filling the air with small clouds. You stand there for a moment, staring at the bread, then start walking home. On the way, you see others leaving the bakery, each holding their own share. No one smiles, but their pace is different, quicker, more upright. The difference is small, almost invisible, but you can feel it in the air, a slight tremor under the stillness. For the first time in months, the city looks like it's breathing. You reach your building, climb the stairs slowly, open the door. The room feels the same, cold, grey, quiet, but the loaf in your hand changes it somehow. You set it on the table, unwrap it carefully. The smell is faint but real, warm, sour, alive. You touch the crust. It's rough, uneven, marked with small cracks. You cut it slowly, the knife pressing through the soft centre. Crumbs fall onto the table. You pick up every one. The first bite is cautious. You chew slowly as if testing the air for danger. The bread tastes like what you remember food tasting like. Real, solid, something your body recognises. You close your eyes and swallow. The warmth spreads through your chest, not from heat, but from memory. You stop after that first piece. You wrap the rest again, careful not to let the paper tear. You don't want to eat too much too quickly. Not because you're saving it, but because you don't want it to end. The city has forgotten what satisfaction feels like. You want to remember it in pieces. Later that day, you hear the same rumour spreading through the building. Doors open. Voices drift through the halls. Footsteps echo. Someone says the bakery confirmed it. The ration has gone up for everyone. Workers, soldiers, children. No one knows why. Maybe a new shipment came through the lake. Maybe the blockade is shifted. Maybe it's just luck. The reason doesn't matter. The number does. 200 grams. It sounds like abundance, though it isn't. It's still small, still fragile, still barely enough to keep a person upright. But compared to 125, it feels like a feast. The difference of 75 grams is invisible, yet it changes everything. You can hear it in the way people breathe, in the way they move, in the faint hum of conversation that returns to the stairwell. That evening, someone knocks on your door. It's the woman from upstairs, the former teacher. She stands there holding her own loaf in a cloth bag. She says nothing at first, just holds it up as proof. You invite her in. She sits near the stove, unwraps the bread, and breaks it in half. You do the same. You both eat quietly, chewing slowly, watching the candle flicker between you. The room smells faintly of yeast. For a few minutes, there's something close to warmth. You talk in low voices, about the snow, about the radio, about nothing important. You both know it won't last, that the hunger will return tomorrow, that the numbers can fall again as easily as they rose. But tonight, you don't say it. When she leaves, she takes her half with her, wrapped carefully again. You sit by the table looking at what's left of yours. The crust is hardening already. You cut another piece, smaller this time, and eat it without water. It tastes like something beyond survival, like a memory of living. Later, the radio hums back to life. The announcer's voice is as calm as always. He reads the same lists, the same news, but near the end, his tone shifts slightly, almost imperceptibly. Bread rations have been increased, he says. The words hang in the air, soft and heavy. He pauses, then adds, "The city endures." You listen to the static after that, your hands resting on the table. The candle burns low, the wax pooling at the base. You think about what those words mean. Not hope, not victory, just endurance. The kind that grows in small increments, in 75 extra grams of bread, in a few moments of shared quiet, in the sound of chewing that breaks the silence. You go to bed without finishing the loaf. You keep it beside you, wrapped in cloth. Its weight is reassuring, solid. You wake in the night once or twice, your hand brushing against it, just to be sure it's still there. In the morning the snow has stopped. The air feels lighter, thinner. You unwrap the bread again, tear off a piece, and eat it slowly, letting it soften in your mouth. You don't hurry. The silence of the city feels different now. Not gone, not broken, but quieter in another way. Like the sound of breathing after holding it too long. You look out the window. The streets are the same, still grey, still empty. but the difference is invisible. In the way people walk, the way smoke rises from the chimneys, the way the cold feels slightly less final. It's just bread, you tell yourself. Just 200 grams instead of 125. But in this city, where numbers mean life, it's enough to make the world shift, just a little. The day passes without fanfare. No one cheers, no one sings. The city doesn't celebrate. It just continues, quietly, stubbornly, with crumbs of warmth clinging to the edges of its hunger. And somewhere, behind boarded windows and frozen doors, the sound of chewing replaces the sound of silence, a small, steady proof that the city is still alive. It doesn't happen suddenly. There's no single sound that marks it, no single moment when the city realizes it's over. It arrives the way the siege began, quietly, in pieces, through whispers that move faster than certainty. You hear it first in a line, standing in the cold as always, waiting for bread. Someone says the shelling has stopped. Someone else says the German lines have broken. No one reacts. Everyone keeps waiting. Later that day, the radio confirms it. The same steady voice that has read lists and announcements for years says something different now. The blockade has been lifted. The words fall into the air like snow. No music follows, no celebration, just the hum of static. The voice continues, reading new numbers, new instructions. People keep listening even after it ends, as if waiting for a correction, an apology, a return to silence. You sit by the window, staring at nothing. The air feels different, lighter somehow. You don't know what to do with it. The habits of hunger don't disappear when the words change. You look at your ration card, still lying on the table, the small holes punched in it, marking each day survived. You trace them with your finger, slowly, as if counting something invisible. Outside, people begin to move differently. Doors open. Voices drift into the streets again. You can hear laughter, soft and uncertain, the kind that sounds like it's testing itself after years of quiet. A few children run across the snow. Their boots slap against the ground. The sound feels strange, almost too loud. The soldiers who guarded the checkpoints walk without rifles now. They talk to each other, smiling a little. You see trucks coming into the city. Real trucks, covered in mud, their engines loud. The smell of fuel fills the air for the first time in years. You watch them pass, carrying sacks of flour, boxes, barrels. The sound of the engines feels foreign, intrusive, alive. You step outside and walk slowly through the snow. The streets look the same, but they don't sound the same. Somewhere, a door slams. Somewhere else, someone is singing. A thin, broken voice, but still singing. The air smells of smoke, but also of bread, faint and distant. You stop and listen, afraid that if you move, it will stop. You pass the old bakery. The boards have been taken off the windows. Inside, people move quickly, shouting to each other. The ovens are burning again. You can see the glow through the doorway. You stand there for a while, watching. No one tells you to move along. No soldiers, no guards. Just heat spilling out into the cold street. You walk farther, past buildings you haven't seen in months. The snow on the roofs has started to melt in places. Water drips from the eaves, leaving dark streaks on the walls. You look up at the sky. It's still grey, but not heavy. It looks thinner now, more like sky than ceiling. The city smells of smoke and dampness, but beneath it there's another scent you barely recognise. Earth. Somewhere, under all the ice, the ground is thawing. You can feel it in the air, a faint softness where everything used to be hard. You breathe it in slowly the way you'd taste something new. You reach the square. People have gathered there, hundreds of them, all standing in silence. Some hold small flags, faded and torn. A soldier steps forward, reading from paper. His voice shakes. He says the siege is officially over. He says the city has survived. He doesn't say how. When he finishes, the crowd doesn't cheer right away. They stand there, waiting for someone else to react first. Then, slowly, a sound starts. Not loud, not joyful, but steady. It's applause, faint and uneven, hands clapping through gloves and bandages. It spreads through the square like wind through trees. It doesn't last long. When it stops, the silence that follows feels softer. You walk home through the same streets, past the same buildings. Nothing has changed, not really. The snow still lies thick, the windows still broken, the air still cold. But every sound feels slightly altered, less final. When you reach your apartment, you light a candle. You set it on the table beside the radio and sit down. You listen to the hum of static, to the faint creak of the walls, to the quiet breathing of the city. You realise that this silence is different now. It isn't empty, it's waiting. You unwrap what's left of your bread. You break off a piece and eat it slowly, tasting it as if for the first time. It still tastes of sour flour and smoke, but it's lighter somehow. You don't count the grams. You don't ration it. You just eat until you're finished. The city begins to stir again in small ways. People sweep snow from doorways. They mend roofs. They light fires in stoves. The sound of hammers echoes faintly through the streets. It doesn't sound like war anymore. It sounds like repair. You see neighbours you thought had disappeared. They move slowly, careful, as if learning how to exist again. Some talk about leaving. Others say they'll never go. Everyone speaks in low voices, as though afraid to wake the city too quickly. You hear someone reading from a newspaper in the stairwell, the first one printed in months. The words are about victory, rebuilding, strength. You listen without moving. The paper rustles between his fingers. The sound of it feels like a heartbeat. That night, the radio plays music. Real music. Not the scratchy recordings or the solemn marches, but a song. Strings, a piano. A voice too clear to belong to the past. You sit in the dark, listening. The melody fills the room, soft and slow. You can hear it drifting through the walls, through the building, out into the city. It sounds fragile, like something new, learning how to exist. You close your eyes. The air feels warmer now, or maybe you've just stopped noticing the cold. You think about everything that didn't survive. The faces, the buildings, the days that disappeared into hunger. You don't dwell on them. You just breathe. Outside, the snow has stopped. The streets are still white, but the sky above them is changing colour faintly, almost imperceptibly. A hint of blue breaking through grey. Water drips steadily from the roofs. The ice on the windows begins to melt, leaving small, clear patches of glass. Through one of them, you see light. Not candlelight, not firelight, but real sunlight, pale and cold and real. You stand and hold your hand against it, feeling the faint warmth through the glass. You don't smile. You just keep your hand there until it fades. The city doesn't celebrate. It exhales. It begins again quietly, as it always has, in the rhythm of footsteps, in the creak of doors, in the sound of water dripping from the eaves. The siege has ended, but the silence stays, softer now, almost kind. And somewhere, beneath the snow, Beneath the years, the city still breathes. Slow, cautious, alive. The city stands again. Not strong, not proud, just standing. The streets that once froze under silence now hum faintly with life. Smoke rises from chimneys again, thin and steady. Windows glow with pale light. People walk slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile rhythm that has returned. The names of the dead are written somewhere, in notebooks, on walls, in the minds of those who remember. But the living don't speak them often. They've learned that silence can hold memory better than words. The city carries its ghosts quietly, in the cracks of walls, in the sound of footsteps at dawn. Factories begin to wake. Their chimneys cough thin grey clouds into the morning. The trams return, screeching on rusted tracks. The sound startles people at first. They've grown unused to noise. Children follow them down the streets, watching the sparks under the wheels. Some laugh, unsure if they're allowed to. The stores reopen one by one. The shelves are half empty, but the smell of bread fills the air again. The first real loaves sit in windows like small miracles. People stop to look at them, not to buy, just to see. The sight of bread is its own kind of nourishment. The radio still hums in every room. It no longer whispers through static, no longer speaks in the same monotone voice. Now it plays songs. Old ones, familiar ones. Sometimes, in the middle of a broadcast, there's silence, as if even the air is listening. Then the music returns, soft and hesitant, like someone remembering how to speak. Spring comes late. The snow melts in slow layers, revealing what's been hidden. Streets, bicycles, bits of metal, fragments of things that once had meaning. The river begins to move again, dark water flowing under the bridges. People stand there for hours, watching it, not saying anything. The sound of running water feels like a language they used to know. The siege doesn't end with celebration. It fades, leaving a kind of stillness behind, a tired calm that seeps into everything. The people who survived move carefully through their own city, as if afraid to wake it too soon. They rebuild walls, patch roofs, plant small gardens in the thawing soil. They don't talk about the hunger anymore. They talk about weather, about work, about small things that sound normal. Some still write. They open their notebooks again, their handwriting stronger now. They don't describe suffering anymore. They describe the sound of water, the smell of damp earth, the sight of the first flowers breaking through the frost. The words are simple, but they feel heavier than before. At night, the city glows faintly. Candles in windows, lamps in courtyards, lights that flicker but do not go out. And the air smells of smoke and dampness and something else. Something like beginning. You walk through the streets slowly, your breath visible in the cold. The snow has turned to slush under your boots. The air hums with faint sounds. Footsteps, voices, laughter. You listen without speaking, letting the noise settle into you. You realise that this, too, is silence. Just another kind. Not empty, not hollow, but full. The buildings around you stand uneven, some scarred, some half gone. But they're still there. The city that starved, froze, burned, and waited. It's still there. It doesn't need to speak. Its existence is the statement. You reach the river again and stop. The water moves steadily, catching light from the sky. You watch it, the motion slow and endless. It looks the way time sounds when it starts again. You stand there until your hands go numb, then turn and walk back through the narrow streets, through the air that smells faintly of bread and thawing earth. The siege is over, but its rhythm stays. It beats quietly beneath the surface of everything, in the patience of the people, in the calm of their voices, in the way they look at the world without surprise. The city breathes, it remembers, it continues. And when night comes and the snow begins again, not heavy, not cruel, just soft, it falls over Leningrad like a blanket, quiet and pale, not to bury, but to keep what remains.